On today's episode of Homeworthy, step into the charm of Victorian homes, where history meets timeless design. Join us as we tour a charming pre-war townhouse in Brooklyn that was beautifully restored and a cozy, lived-in home in England that is adorned with personal mementos and heritage pieces. Then, we'll step inside a picturesque 150-year-old home in Georgia that was once in dire need of repair before finally exploring an eclectic Queen Anne Victorian home where striking Brutalist chandeliers and elegant Art Deco furnishings creates a stunning mix of new and old. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Christina Solway, and you're joining me at my townhouse in Brooklyn, New York. Come on in. So you come in and the first thing you see is our front entryway. And I was really driven by function as much as aesthetics in this space. So I always think you need a place to put your stuff down when you walk in. And I have an 11-year-old son, and so I need a place to put shoes immediately, because otherwise, if I don't have a place to put shoes, there will be shoes and bags and stuff everywhere. And this piece I literally found for free on Instagram. Like, someone I followed was making like a template for a table, and she's like, I got this, do you want it? It's free. And I zoomed over to Bushwick to pick it up, and it's the perfect piece. Basically, all of our shoes go in these little cubbies. It's a perfect place to put your stuff down, a perfect place to put your keys. But also, like when I have somebody coming to film, it really dresses up pretty well. And then on this side, major hook storage. Just again, it's all about function in this space, but you still want it to look clean and tidy, and we're getting kind of the best of both worlds. The mirror actually came out of an apartment that I was working on for a client on the Upper West Side. It was this really exquisite apartment that had a huge amount of sort of pre-war details, and my client was sort of trying to shift it towards something a little bit more modern, and she really didn't like this mirror, and I was like, really? Because I really do like this mirror. And so I brought it home and I hung it in my front hallway, and here it now resides. And then the light fixture I actually found on Facebook Marketplace for 40 bucks. And I wanted something that had real presence. You know, this is a really high ceiling, and we have all the pressed tin ceilings throughout the apartment or throughout the house. And I really wanted to sort of draw your eye up so that you really got to see that. And I think that this really achieves that. In our actual little vestibule, so when we bought the house, this is in Greenpoint, and when we bought the house, it had the old school like asphalt shingling on the front, which is really common in Greenpoint. It's like one guy went through Greenpoint in 1960 and sold everybody asphalt shingles. And we actually took the shingles off and restored the original clapboard, and then we reinstalled the original doors. But these aren't our original doors. They're actually architectural salvage, and we found them at a place upstate. There's an incredible salvage place called Hudson Valley Architectural Salvage. So we got these from there, and we brought them back and fitted them. We reinstalled a transom. We opened this transom up. It had been closed up, but we knew that there was a transom back there. So we installed this, installed these, and then this wallpaper is actually vintage wallpaper I found in a house that I was renovating in Maine. It, like, literally, they, for whatever reason, the previous owners had like boxes and boxes of old wallpaper, and I pulled it out and I was like, well, this is fantastic. So I figured eventually I'd have a way to use it, and lo and behold, here it is. The floor tile we installed ourselves. This painting I actually lugged back with me from France, which I don't know if you've ever traveled with a painting, but it's like very harrowing. And I had it in a shopping bag, and I just had to carry it on the plane, be like, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, please don't hurt my painting. And then I get it framed when I got back. So that's the sort of, I mean, this was a major transformation, both on the exterior and the interior of this vestibule, because it was really pretty dismal when we got here. When we got here, the entire house was covered in rolls of linoleum. They had put linoleum, layers and layers of linoleum over all of the floors and all the way up the stairs. And everything, all of the moldings, all of the railings, everything was painted like dark, like sticky brown. It was an uncanny texture. So we restored all of the floors, obviously pulled up all the linoleum, refinished the floors, refinished the stairs, and then I stripped this banister myself, which was an absolutely miserable process. I cannot discourage anyone enough from doing it. It's so time consuming. But I will say I'm incredibly happy with the results. So if that's any indication, maybe it was worth it. But it was an unbelievably time consuming process of just layers and layers and layers of paint stripper to get it off and then sanding. But this is the original newel post. These are the original spindles. And now, I mean, now that it's down to natural, it's really quite beautiful. It's like an incredibly soft, like almost velvety wood. So we're pretty happy with it. These two paintings actually came out of a country house that we owned. This was actually given to me by my mom's best friend. It has a bullet hole in it, which he thought was really a hoot. And this guy is just this incredibly somber portrait. I have a couple of these. I call them my ancestors. They are not my ancestors, but I have these sort of like very somber paintings of evidently very affluent men and women who do not belong to me. And then moving on, this leads right into the living room. And it's funny, like a lot of people, I think when they renovate these townhomes tend to open this up and make it all into one big open plan. And a couple of friends, when they came over, they're like, is that the plan? Are you gonna make this into one big floor? And I just was like, absolutely not. Like, this is a Victorian home. It was built in the 1850s. I really wanted to honor what it was. And also it's got all of this like extraordinary architectural detail. It's got this sensational multi-phase molding. It's got all of this multi-phase crown molding. I mean, this is the stuff you pine for when you think about a pre-war building in New York City. And the idea of getting rid of that in the name of a sort of like open floor plan, which is totally unappealing to me. And ultimately, I think the way that we live here, it really works. Like, I really like that there is a sense of an entryway. I like that the living room is its own space. I like that the dining room is its own space. I think for our like sort of lifestyle, it works really well. This living room is highly, highly functional in that there's an enormous amount of seating. It's incredibly comfortable. There is a television hidden behind that painting, which everybody jokes about because they can't believe I hid a television behind a painting. It's kind of a jack of all trades in that it's like incredibly comfortable, and you can sit here. I mean, we sit here as a family and we watch movies all the time, but we also, 2 nights ago, we had a whole bunch of people over and we all sat in here and like drank cocktails, and it really, it's really able to do double duty that way, which I really love. And I think about that when I'm designing for clients as well as for myself, is I really want something to be, I want it to have versatility. I want it to be both incredibly comfortable, but still perform aesthetically when you have your like fanciest friends over. And I think like trying to find the balance there. Basically, I mean, you're gonna find this when I do this house tour. Almost everything in this house has a story, so you just have to like pick your poison. All of the fireplaces in the house are original. They were covered in like layers and layers of paint. Again, we stripped all of these ourselves. A miserable process, excellent results. Over here we have this wild collection of like weird and wonderful carved wooden things. I think I'm really attracted to both the kind of the architecture and the texture of these. It's like they're adding dimension without adding noise, which I'm really interested in. I like to play around with that a lot. The tiger rug is something I acquired when I was in France. I was at a flea market in France and this guy was selling this tiger rug. I was actually at a food market and I was walking along. I was like meant to be buying strawberries and I was like, what is that tiger rug. And I brought it home, and my original intention was to lay it on the floor of the vestibule, but everybody kept tripping over his tail, and I was like, this is not sustainable. So either someone's gonna get hurt or the tail's gonna get hurt. And so I decided just to use it as a wall hanging, and I really love it up there, to be honest. I have a whole collection of these antique stairs, these miniature stairs. I'm interested in these sort of like odd architectural elements. I think they're curious, and I think there's something really fun about creating a sort of collection that feels very curated and thoughtful, but also a little atypical. I obviously also don't mind a little whimsy. I think my son stuck this eye patch on there, and I was like, that seems good. So that's that. These guys were Facebook Marketplace finds. I think they were maybe $200 for the pair, and then I had them reupholstered. And again, they're just weird, and they're almost like a little, there's something like a little comical about them, but I thought they were really beautiful and interesting and very attracted to a little odd, I think. And so I think that kind of a lot of this articulates that. Over here, this is what John and I call our divorce couch. I bought this, I think I actually bought this on Craigslist when Craigslist was still really a thing. And we picked it up from a loft in Dumbo and put it on top of our Volvo, which is not what you're meant to do when you're moving a large couch. And we brought it back to our old apartment. And I had measured really fastidiously to make sure it would fit in the elevator and that it would fit through the door. And I had not accounted for this one turn it had to make to get into our door, and we couldn't get it in. So then we took it down the elevator and tried to take it through the hallway of the lower apartment and up the stairs, and we got it stuck in the downstairs hallway, stuck. Couldn't get it, we couldn't move it left, right, up, down, got stuck in someone else's hallway, which is not a cool thing to do in New York City. And had to call the sofa doctor, and he had to take it apart completely and bring it up into our apartment and put it back together. And then when we moved out of that apartment, I had to take it apart again and have it put back together on the street. And John was like, I'm pretty sure that whatever you saved by buying this on Craigslist, you have now spent on sofa doctors. But it was the absolute closest we've ever gotten to divorce is when we got that couch stuck in that hallway. He was like, that's it, I'm done with you. Anyway, here we are now, so I guess we persevered. And then ultimately, I now have had this couch for, I think about 12 years. And at some point, the leather seats started to break down. And so I had them recovered with this mohair, and I did this little green piping. And again, it's these little fun details, right? I think I'm a big believer in buying used furniture that is of good quality and then reupholstering it and giving it another life. And one of the great things about doing that is at the same time, it gives you the opportunity to make something feel really custom rather than kind of big box, which is such a great hack, really. This whole setup is actually inherited from John's grandmother, and it's I think I like the idea of this home feeling sort of like a Victorian cabinet of curiosities. I think I sort of always have this sort of fantasy that our house is gonna feel like some Victorian explorer has gone around the world collecting things, and this is his accumulated stash. And that's kind of what I'm channeling whenever I'm decorating. And so when she died, she left this, and I was like, I absolutely want that. So that's another little piece. Okay, I'm gonna show you. You're not allowed to make fun of me for this though, but this is where our TV is. And it's on a little cleat, and it just hangs there. And then when we're done, we just put it back on the cleat, and it's gone. And everybody I know is I can't believe you take that painting down every time you watch TV, but we don't really watch that much TV, and I just really couldn't stand the idea of having a television just staring me in the face all the time. So that's what we opted for. This guy, obviously you want to know about this guy, come on. This is the most sensational chair ever. I bought it at an auction at Doyle's, which is on the Upper East Side. And It's funny, like, you know, I've bid on things in auction before, but this piece, I like saw it in their catalog and I was like, oh my God, I need that. And I went and it was, I don't know if you've ever done an auction. It's so stressful and you're sitting there with your little paddle and you feel like you're gonna have a heart attack. And I just was like bidding and bidding and bidding, and then I won it, and I think it's possibly my favorite piece of furniture. I just think it's outrageous. It's upholstered in Pierre Frey, which is a really great textile maker. And I just think it's preposterous. Look at this thing. One of my friends says it has good acoustics, which I think is like always the sign of a good piece of furniture. The only things that we bought new in this house are basically these two chandeliers, the bed linens, and the dishes and glasses, I think. And towels, I guess. But almost everything else is like vintage, antique. It's from Facebook Marketplace. It's from yard sales. I really love to collect. But the light fixtures, these two light fixtures, both in the living room and the dining room, are both brand new. And I wanted to, I didn't want to get like trapped in the pre-war aesthetic so much that it felt like I was creating a museum. I really wanted to create a juxtaposition of new and old. And I think this really sort of achieved that. It's, I think it's fun, it's interesting, it's architectural, but it also doesn't feel overly precious or overly serious. And I think that's sort of something I continually in the house try to achieve, is that balance between, sort of like beautiful design and, really intentional design, but also not like overly serious. I want it to be accessible. I want it to be fun. I want it to feel like you're allowed to live here. So one of my favorite details about the dining room are the pocket doors. These are original. They were here, and they were totally painted over. The glass was completely painted over. So we had them dipped. You could actually, we took them out totally, and we sent them to a place in New Jersey where they dip them and strip all of the paint off of them, and then we reinstalled them. And again, like these are these architectural details that are original to the house. They're really classic pre-war design details. And like this is the stuff that when you buy a townhouse, these are the gems you're looking for. And it's interesting too, even just functionally, like as I said, as a family, the way we move through this house, like sometimes we'll have a dining room full of adults in here and a living room full of kids in here, and the kids can all sit in here and watch TV, and we can close these doors and the adults can all sit in here and eat, and like we can live in perfect harmony. And that kind of layout works incredibly well for our family. I mean, obviously, again, to each their own, but like the way that we live, having these separate spaces is really functional for us. The dining room is sort of this interior room, and it doesn't get a tremendous amount of light. It only has this one window. And I decided, rather than try and sort of like pedal against that and make it white, and sort of, often when white doesn't get enough light, it really reads gray. And I really did not want this to be a gray room. And so I decided just to lean in and do a color with some real saturation. And this is Farrow & Ball's Blue Green. And I think it's a really successful color. It feels like really rich. It feels really saturated, but it's not sort of overwhelmingly dark. I think it just feels like kind of moody and rich. Of course, everything in here also has a story. I'm sorry. The dining room table and chairs were bought on Facebook Marketplace. I had never seen a chair with this design. I mean, they've got like pegs for the seats. I mean, they're really curious. It's an antique set. And it actually came with a huge hutch, which we now use in our pantry. So I'll show that to you later. As you come into the room, we've got this incredible chandelier. This is one of my favorite pieces. This came from Soho Home. And I just think, again, like much like the light fixture in the living room, it's like a real showstopper, but it's also not overly serious. It's not overly formal. I think it brings a little of the like kind of modern funk to the room. I didn't want this to accidentally become like just a Victorian farmhouse. I really wanted to kind of pull that tension a little more. So I think that really achieves that light fixture does. The huge mirror, this is like a Victorian gilt mirror, and this actually came out of my husband's bar. He used to own a bar in East Williamsburg, and when we sold it, they bought the entire everything, lock, stock, and barrel, except the mirror. I said, the mirror does not stay. And so we brought the mirror here. And as soon as it landed here, it was like, oh, it should always have been here. These are my other ancestors. Also not my ancestors. These actually came from a client of mine, like one of my very favorite clients, and she had them hanging in her home for like a decade. And we were working on her home and we were doing these renovations, and she looked at me and she's like, you know, I am so sick of those people looking at me. And I was like, well, I am not. I will totally have them look at me. And so I brought them here, and here they sit. So this is a seltzer faucet. It has cold water that's filtered and then carbonated water. And I've never been so hydrated in my life. It's like an absolute delight. And it runs through a filtration system, so it's cold. It's like the greatest gift. It's insane. Also, it's like a great way to wow people when they come over for dinner. We were like, would you like flat or sparkling? And they're like, what is this, a restaurant? Over here, this whole array, this whole vignette, all of these are antique or vintage Hager pottery, well, largely Hager pottery. And they actually, most of them, like all of the little pieces, came from our wedding. So when we had our wedding, instead of having like a formal florist do our flowers, I collected all of these different like sort of matte white pottery vessels, and my mom's really good friend did all of the floral arrangements for us, and they were on all of the tables. And at the end of the wedding, I then collected them all back together. I actually gave a bunch to people because I had so much white pottery at that point, and I kept some of my favorite pieces and then kind of made a vignette of them all together, which is sort of, it's sweet. It's like a really lovely, like everyday reminder of our wedding, which is pretty lovely. The rug is from Cherish. It's one of their reed rugs, and the thing that's really incredible about these rugs is they come in set sizes, but you can also order additional squares and you can stitch them on. So you can totally customize the size, which is sheer genius. Like, I've not seen anybody else do that with a rug. And as a designer, like, the number of times you deal with these rooms that just want a rug that isn't 8 by 10 or 9 by 12, but like 8 by 8 or 6 by 7, it's not every room's a rectangle. And the idea that you can like stitch on these extra squares is just like, why haven't we been doing this? It's such a good idea. We host a lot. John is a really avid cook. To be honest, I'm really more of a baker, but John is a really avid cook. So we probably host dinner parties like 2 or 3 times a month. So this space like does like major sort of heavy lifting in that respect. But also as a family, we just sit here, we sit here for dinner. We really sit in there for breakfast, but we sit in here for dinner almost every evening. The flowers are just, I have like these little guys, the little yellow puffs. I have like such a soft spot for them. And these, I believe, are like some kind of yellow orchid. And again, like I love to have, you can see throughout the house, I have like plants, I have flowers all the time. I just think, again, it adds like sort of a layer of like sort of humanity to a home, right? It really feels like we live here, and it gives a sense of like warmth and vibrancy. And sometimes I think instead of having stuff, having plants goes a long way. So the kitchen was one of our biggest renovations. This room was actually a bedroom when we got here. I think historically it had been a kitchen, but the people who were living here before us were using it as a bedroom. So there was none of this in here anymore. And so we basically totally overhauled the kitchen. We installed the backsplash, we installed the cabinets, we installed the stove, we installed the sink. The sink actually came from a kitchen that was upstairs that now is a bedroom. And this we actually had from our house in Maine, and we brought it down with us. And the cabinets, I actually had a cabinet maker that I work with in New York. They're called Express Millworking. And I gave them one of the doors from the pantry cabinet, and I asked them to match that because I really wanted these to feel as much like they were sort of part of sort of original to the house. I really wanted the whole kitchen to feel like it was always here, and was sort of trying to channel that sort of sense of a kind of Victorian kitchen scullery sensibility, which is also why I ran the tile all the way up. The tin ceilings are original. The mantelpiece is original. And then we kind of added everything else. The tile, you know, John jokes that I've been like in my like green phase for about 5 years. I found this tile at Complete Tile and it just blew my socks off. And I think I just wanted to kind of go big or go home. And so we ran it all the way up the walls. We put this in ourselves. And then for us, my feeling was this is a really limited amount of space. There wasn't a huge amount of sort of optionality there. It's like kind of this is it because we have windows on this side and the pantry behind. And so the conclusion was dishwasher, stove. We have this one cabinet that goes into the corner. So it gives us a fair amount of storage. But the real reason this all works is because of the pot rack. So much of our cooking stuff is hanging here. And I think that like kind of liberates the need for that much more below counter storage. And then interestingly, like this is really it, which is fascinating. You know, I think people often, when they're designing kitchens and they're thinking about kitchens, it's like so much cabinetry, so much storage, but you know, this is it. And we can host a dinner party for 8 and have like 4 courses based on what's sitting here. And, you know, we don't really need much more than that. So that's kind of the gist of the kitchen. It's sort of high efficiency, but also, you know, with an eye to being as sort of beautiful as possible without compromising function. As I said, John is a really enthusiastic cook. And so kind of no decision could be made that was only about being beautiful. It had to work as well. And that's really the way this is laid out. Like even just having these 2 spaces flanking the stove, having this as an additional workspace, like we really made use of every single inch of this kitchen. So the sink is like a great example of sort of being both aesthetically pleasing and highly functional. And that obviously it's bringing a lot to the kitchen in terms of what it looks like, but also it's this incredibly deep basin. It's got this integrated drain board. So it really is, it's like kind of doing everything, right? It's bringing it aesthetically, but also really, really like very efficient. So the island is actually a freestanding piece of furniture. It's just, I think it's probably like a dining room console, but we couldn't have like a conventional island in here. There's not enough width in the room. You wouldn't be able to pass by stools. And so what I decided to do was get a much sort of narrower piece of furniture and top it with the same stone, with the same profile as the rest of the counters, and then flank it with stools. And that way it's sort of doing the same function as a kitchen island, but taking up literally half the footprint of a conventional island. And I mean, the amount of time that we end up, it's very funny, but the amount of time we end up sitting in here, like 6 adults while John is cooking and I'm like leaning against the sink or I'm like sous chefing, and everybody just ends up in this room rather than the rest of the house is unbelievably frequent. And it's one of these things that's, you know, we could have just had like a little round table, like a little breakfast table, but there's something about this that again, really is both about function and aesthetic in that John can use it as a work surface when he's cooking every day. We can use it as a social space when we have friends over. We can sit here and have breakfast. It's, you know, it's really doing all the things. And I think that's such a great sort of takeaway when you're thinking about design is how can I make every single choice as like versatile, as functional, as beautiful as possible? Like, can I hit all of those notes? I mean, it's funny, like often I feel like my aesthetic for myself is very different than what I do for my clients. I'm not a really dogmatic designer, and I tend to design for the client rather than sort of bringing my signature to them. Whereas in my own home, I think I'm really conscious about how I balance sort of quiet and noise. And that's how I describe it, quiet and noise. Like, I like the idea of the sort of box being a little bit more serene, and then there being these like kind of punches of color or punches of sound. And I think it sort of creates a good balance so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. I don't want to come into a house and just feel like everything is coming at me. I like the idea of there being sort of moments of peacefulness and then elements that are interesting. And so in the dining room, I kind of inverted that, where the walls are a little more bold and the furniture is a little bit more mellow. In the living room, the walls are very quiet and the furniture is a little bit more bold, and kind of like tipping those scales back and forth so that you feel like you can move sort of serenely through a space and don't feel overwhelmed or underwhelmed. This was another, like maybe it was also a kitchen or something. There was a little sink back here, and we moved this enormous piece of furniture into this room, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? Because it's a tiny room and it's a huge piece of furniture, but it has so much storage. So we have all of our like sort of small appliances, our like food processor, our blender, all of that stuff all goes in here. The microwave is here, the toaster is here, all the ugly stuff that happens in a kitchen, it's all back here, which is great because it doesn't mean we've compromised function, but we also have been able to sort of retain the aesthetic of the kitchen. And then as you go deeper, we've got wine racks, we've got all of our food storage. So it's still like all of the function is still here, but we've really managed to strike the balance between beauty and function. This is one of the things that's so tricky, right? Because the fireplace is here, this room was separated into two and it was pretty non-negotiable. So what we opted to do is really make the most of this tiny space by making it high function. And so we brought in this gigantic piece of furniture that has all of these drawers and all of these cabinets, and then just built the rest of it out in order to maximize the amount of storage we could get in here. I'm gonna take you upstairs and show you the bedrooms now. This is a cute piece with a cute story. John and I were in Portugal when we were, I don't know, like 20. We were so young, we were kids. And this play was being performed in Porto, and I loved the poster so much. And I wrote to the guy and I was like, I really love the poster. Is there any way to buy one of the posters? And like 2 weeks later, a package arrived in the mail and he had sent me one of the actual like street posters. And if you look at it, you can still see like the folds in it because he had taken one of the big street signs and literally folded it up and put it in the mail for me, which I thought was like unbelievably adorable because he did not know me from Adam. And then a friend of mine for a wedding present made us this big frame for it. And here it hangs. Now we're on the second floor, and this is where two of the bedrooms are and the bathroom. This is our bathroom. It is adorable. This is called a coffin tub. I don't know if you've ever heard of one of these, but it basically is wood clad. It's got a copper lining. It's really deep. It is literally the best shower I've ever had, which is funny. The shower head is from Amazon, so sorry Waterworks, but this is amazing. And everything about it is just an absolute joy. There's something about standing on the copper, it's like very soft underfoot, and it holds the temperature of the water in a really nice way. It's just an absolute pleasure. The floor tile is from Floor & Decor. It's like cheap and cheerful. This chair I literally found on the street. It was at the end of someone's driveway, and then I had it recovered in Rogers and Goffingen fabric. This is actually the shower curtain my mom made for me. It's a textile from, it was a bed sheet from Piglet in Bed, and I just had my mom is like a much better seamstress than I am, and she made me the shower curtain. The wall tiles from Urban Archaeology, and they actually have, although maybe this is like a trade secret, they have like a surplus warehouse, and you can write to them and they'll send you like a totally unintelligible list of everything they have in stock. And I just went like through it line by line until I found a tile that I liked that they had enough of, and then I literally drove to Queens and picked it up. The sink is an antique. It actually also, I'm like, I sound like a pack rat. It also came out of a client's house when we were gutting her bathroom. She wanted a vanity, and I was like, well, I don't, and I stuck it in my car. So here it is, but this is an antique, came out of the Upper West Side. And then the door is actually original to the house and was totally painted over, so you couldn't see the pattern at all. And it originally was actually hanging upstairs in my son's bathroom, and I stole it and brought it down here and turned it into a pocket door. So my son sleeps upstairs, so for the most part, John and I are just down here alone. But I'm not going to tell you this is like a normal setup. I'm pretty sure this wouldn't work for everybody. But so what we did is we set up these doors. These are actually, they're antique. I think I found them on Facebook Marketplace. And the reason I did this is I didn't want to kill all of the natural light in this hallway. And so the idea of having these be solid just felt like it was just going to make this hallway feel so dark and so bleak. So for the most part, these are just open, but we do also have curtains. So like when we have friends over and they sleep over in the guest room, we can actually close the curtains. But this isn't the only way into this room. There's also a door over there because at some point, I guess you entered from that side. I don't know. I mean, the opening was here when we got here. There were like weird louvered doors. So this room, our primary bedroom, so we changed the louvered doors. There was like a closet that was built in here that we removed. We stripped this fireplace as well. There was magenta pink wall-to-wall carpet in here, which is a choice. It was really a shocking color of pink. And as a testimony to its quality, it had really retained its color. It was bright pink. Again, every single thing in this room has a story. So the painting above the bed, I got at a flea market in Paris. So everybody goes to like the very fancy flea market in Paris that's in the north of Paris. I do not go there because it's the very fancy flea market in Paris. There's another market that's in the south. It's the Porte de Vanves, and it's like this like real street, like a real street fair of a flea market, and it's like a quarter of the price of everything else, but there are really great finds to be had, but you just have to be willing to sort of like fight for it a little more. So I bought this there and was truly just a rolled up canvas, and I carried it with me home and then got it framed. But if you look at it, you can sort of see that it's just a canvas like mounted onto board because it was so deteriorated they couldn't wrap it. Everything else in here has a story. I bought the chair at Brimfield. Look at this is the tiniest chair. It was the first thing I saw when I drove up, and I was like, what is that itty bitty chair? Obviously, I need to bring that home. The sconces are from Serena and Lily. This is one of the things, this room is tricky. I mean, if you think about it, there are 1, 2, 3 doors in this room and windows on the other wall. There's like, and a fireplace. It's like, there's almost nowhere to put a bed. So we put the bed here, and then I knew I wanted to have sconces, so we still had reading lamps. Then I was like, obviously I need to get a pair of ceramic elephants as nightstands. It's the only obvious choice. And I happened to find a pair at an antique store. There's a great antique store called the Berkshire Gallery. It's in Great Barrington, upstate. And I walked upon these and I was like, well, that's it. These are definitely what I'm looking for. The bed is literally a bed from, I think from Wayfair, maybe it was from Amazon, and I had it reupholstered. So I basically just used the frame and then had it reupholstered, and the fabric is a cravat fabric. The bed linen is from Piglet in Bed. I work with them a lot, and I love their products. I love the texture of everything, and I love all the gingham. I really kind of feel like you can't have enough gingham in your life. I just feel like it's like so cheerful and so joyful. So you'll see that a lot in our house. I really layer in a lot of gingham. The rug is an antique, I think like kind of Art Deco Chinese rug. It's silk. Facebook Marketplace, obviously. The light fixture is a dupe. It's very similar to I think they're like Pele ball chandeliers, but this is a dupe from Vault, which I absolutely love, and I'm really sorry I bought a dupe, but I did it. And the drapes, these are these like funny like design hacks. The drapes are from H&M. Who knew? But like the drapes are from H&M and they're like charming. They have this little like ochre trim. They've got this sweet little like sort of ruching at the top. And they feel like really intentional and really chosen, and they were really inexpensive. So it's interesting, there are like different websites you can look where you'd never really expect that you could get home goods, but like H&M, Zara, like these places you'd never really expect to look for home goods, and they can be a great hack to buy things that are a little less expensive and still add like a nice layer to your house. When I walked into our townhouse, I mean, it was absolutely brimming with someone else's stuff. The former occupants had lived here for 80 years, and they were like 3 generations all living in the house. But everything was really intact still. Like all of the fireplaces were here, all of the moldings were here, the crown moldings, the huge baseboards, all of these really beautiful details that are really hard to synthesize were here. And in some respects, like all of the other stuff that needed to be like tweaked and repaired and put back together, that's work I can do. But like creating, incredible carved, ornate crown moldings, that is just absolutely beyond my skill set. And so finding something where those details were intact felt like such a gem. By the time you find a house in New York City, it's already been like gutted by someone who had like a really enthusiastic love affair with Home Depot tile. And like, I didn't want that. I didn't want to buy something that somebody had already like whitewashed or like gray washed and turned into something modern. That's not what I was looking for. I wanted something I could really put my own stamp on. And this was just totally untouched. So we built this entire wall of cabinets, and it's basically, I wanted it to look like it was paneling, but it's actually storage. So at the end, we have the laundry cabinet, and we have like a built-in laundry. You want to get in there? Now you really are looking at my dirty laundry. And then the next one over is a linen cupboard. And then the next one over is like all coats and suitcases. And then what we did, so these are literally just doors from IKEA. And we had we bought 7 doors from IKEA. And then we worked with this incredibly talented carpenter who mimicked the same style up above and then mounted them all on sort of hidden hinges so that when they were all closed, they looked like they were essentially like a continuous wall of paneling. But again, these are like these funny hacks, right? Like this is just IKEA, and then we just made it look a lot more intentional, and then we painted it so it feels like it's specific to this space. These are both vintage pieces. I picked them up in Mexico City when I was in Mexico City. This is a totally crazy piece of art that came from like an outsider art festival in San Francisco. It's literally painted on a roller shade. And then this is our guest room, which is cute. If you live in New York City and you have a guest room, you're basically running a hotel. So it's like good to have like a nice, functional, welcoming guest room. They've got their own bathroom. Like I swear, like once a week we've got somebody sleeping in here. It's like, it's a blessing and a curse, but it's a pretty neat thing to be able to have friends and family be able to pop in. And then let's go upstairs. Now we're upstairs. This is my son's little powder room. And we added this sink. I think I like found this sink. I like found it at a yard sale for $10 or something, like honestly like 15 years ago. And I just have been like carrying it from house to house being like, one day, green sink. And we got here and this bathroom only had a toilet and no sink. So we had the plumbing run and put in and it was like, well, that's exactly what is meant to be here because there's 1 inch on either side of this wall. And then I painted the walls to match the sink. And then all the wallpaper is actually a collection of French costume drawings that came out of, this is a ridiculous story. I was on the Upper East Side and I was driving along and there was a junk lugger's van And I saw these guys like throwing these boxes of like beautiful prints into this junk luggers van. So I like screeched to a halt and I jumped out and I was like, wait, what are you doing? And the guys looked at me like I was totally nuts. And I was like, wait, I'll take them, I'll take them. And I begged them to pull the prints out of the back of the truck. And they gave me like boxes of these prints. And if you look at them really closely, they're like hand painted. They're absolutely gorgeous. So I came home and I was like, well, now what? Like, what's the game plan? Now I've got these like hundreds of these prints. And I decided that I was gonna basically sort of install them like wallpaper. So I just Mod Podged them up, and it's just page after page, and I just sort of set them up as a grid. And now they're wallpaper. And also I still have like hundreds of them. So if anybody needs any, I've got a bunch. And then this little guy is just a little magnet. Look at, he's like a little solar light. Isn't he cute? And then you can like pop him off and charge him. What a charmer. This is my son's room. You should know it's never this clean. It's literally only because you guys are here. Usually it's like basically carpeted in Lego. But this room, you know, I mean, I think a lot of designers struggle with this with their kids because I want it to be his room and I want it to be emblematic of him and I want him to feel like ownership of it and feel comfortable in it. But I also don't want it to be like covered. Like if he had his way, he would have like a otters in space blanket or something. Like it would be not what I'm doing. And so I think we tried to like kind of find a balance between like Godzilla and Bob's Burgers and gingham and lovely patterns and colors. And so he chose the paint color. He was like, I want gold trim. He agreed to the blue ceiling. He was into that. That wasn't of his, that was my idea, but he was into it. We've got all of these poster frames. So these also came from H&M and they're absolutely genius. They're magnetic. And that way, like he swapped them out as he's like gotten older. He's like changed them for different things. But again, it's like one of these things, like if he had his druthers, they would just be like on the wall with like push pins. But just by having them in these little magnet frames, it makes them feel like a little more intentional, a little more chosen, a little less teenage boy. So that's the scoop. Again, this fireplace, we also stripped back. It was covered in like 10,000 coats of paint. This room was the room that was honestly the most intact in the house. Like all of the ceiling, the molding, everything was really in really good shape. So it was really just about like painting and kind of just bringing it back to life, which is pretty great. And then the other thing that's really cool about his room is he's got this little space that he calls his studio. And it's like just another little nook. And he has a green screen that he sometimes sets up and he does like little stop motion animation. And he has a desk in here and it's like his own little kind of reading room. And then I put up this wallpaper. This came from, I think it might be from Sonneman. And you know, it's just like fun and playful and he was really into it. And it picks up a lot of like the kind of the greens and blues from the rest of the house. So it just felt like kind of a great splash. Like I can't imagine putting it in a big room, but it's really perfect in this little space. The curtains come from IKEA. But again, they're like dynamite. They're blackout. They're like, the color is great. The pattern is great. It works really well in the room. So that's the scoop. Like one of the incredible things about having a townhouse is having outdoor space. Like in New York City, that is one of the most coveted commodities is having outdoor space. So come see ours. It's not big, but it's mighty. So when we got here, it was really a jungle. It's a little bit of a jungle right now because we're like in the height of the summer, but it was like a jungle, like completely overgrown. And we installed the stone patio. And I've just got things like growing as they go, but it's pretty enchanted. I really wanted it to feel like sort of a secret garden. I wanted to have some privacy, but all of this stuff is stuff that we planted in the last 2 years, and it's just like growing gangbusters, which is pretty crazy. We planted this cherry tree, we've got string lights. Our neighbors have grapes growing over the wires, so they grow up all over the summer. It's a pretty enchanted space. And to be able to like sit out here and barbecue and hang out with friends at night feels like just magical. It's funny, I joke about this with the whole house. It sort of feels like it's a country house in the city. And this, I think even more so. It really feels like you're in your own magic garden, even though, you know, you're surrounded by 8 million other people. So I think what makes a house a home is, in my opinion anyway, I think it needs to be sort of demonstrative of who lives there. And I think our house is like really a collection of our stories. I mean, as I said, every single piece has a story. Every single piece came from a different place. So much of it's come from our travels as a family or as a couple. And it's really like this sort of lovely accumulation of our lives all in a nutshell, right? It's like, this is all the things we've done up until this point. And I think there's something about that, like you walk into our house and you get a real clear understanding of who we are as people and who we are as a family. And that's the difference between a house and a home.
On today's episode of Homeworthy, we're in England visiting the charming home of entrepreneur Anna Hart. Anna, a former Londoner, now resides in this cozy and lived-in Victorian home with her husband. They've filled it with mementos from their travels and pieces that reflect their roots. As musicians, they've even carved out a music room that's perfect for relaxing and unwinding. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hey Homeworthy, I'm Anna and this is Dottie. Welcome to our house in Hertfordshire. Come on in. I'm Anna Hart. I'm a brand consultant, content creator and huge fan of interior design. And we are in my home in Hertfordshire, which is just north of London. Welcome to our kitchen diner. One of the things that really appealed to us when we looked at this house is that this bit of work was already done. The previous owners had knocked it through. I think it was 3 or 4 rooms before. It's just a really practical space. We didn't fit this kitchen, but it's great. What I really like about it is there aren't many cupboards. Pretty much everything is in drawers. We did put this oven in. I love cooking, so we needed a really good oven. So we got one of those, although the slow cooker and the air fryer are kind of becoming slightly more important pieces as time goes on. Out this way, we have a utility and a bathroom out there. So you've kind of got everything you need here. Coffee maker, I would save this in a fire. This is my favourite. This piece of furniture, it's just from IKEA, but it's followed me from every rental I've ever had in London, and it's falling apart, but I just can't get rid of it. Then we move into the dining room. I really wanted a kitchen sofa, so that was one of the first things that we got when we moved in. It is actually a sofa bed, but we've never used it. Like it doesn't really, I don't know why we did that, but there's that. I really love Slim Aaron's photography. We've got a few in the house. This is one of them. This really looks like my friend's mum. So I always say, hello, Carol. This we picked up in a flea market. If you are in the UK, you absolutely have to go to Kempton Racecourt Market because it's the best. You go really early, mainly cash. It's great. This table is big, but you needed it for the space. I actually set an alarm for 5 in the morning to wake up and win this on eBay. So there's that. These are old school chairs that I spray painted black. We'd love to upgrade them at some point, but they kind of do the job. All of our cookbooks. Fabric-wise, you'll see a lot of William Morris in this house. I have consulted for them for a few years. So when this collection came out, I had my eye on it from the start. I am half Welsh, so my mother has very much put Welsh features in the house, so you'll also see a lot of Welsh blanket material throughout the house. This, as she'll want me to tell you, is the St David's cross print. Please tell me I'm right, because if not, I will get told off. And then this picture wall is kind of indicative of us, really, because there's a real mix of some really good stuff and then just stuff that we've picked up. This is a postcard from Paris that I got framed. One of my favourite things to do is to buy cheap frames and then take them to a framer and get a custom mount, which we also did for this. This was just a postcard from a visit to the V&A. Some London stuff. What else have we got? Obviously we have a Beatle and a tour poster because my husband works in music, and puffins because you get puffins where my mum's from, so that obviously had to be there. And that's the kitchen. This home is a Victorian Edwardian house. It's a pretty classic house for its time in that it's a double-fronted red bricked home. It was built by the man who owned the local brickmakers. So we have some quite interesting brickwork on the front of the house because he used all the different types of bricks in the exterior and stuff like that. So it was kind of a bit of a show home, I guess, which makes a lot of sense because there's a few quirks with this house that we are sort of uncovering as we go. We've lived here for 3 years. The house is about 3,500 square foot. There are 6 bedrooms, 3 bath or 3.5 bath, and we love it. Now I'm going to take you to the living room. Welcome to my living room. We have Dorothy here, or Dottie. Most of the time she's only Dorothy when she's naughty, which might well happen while we're trying to do this because she's following us around. This room was the first room we did when we moved in. I really wanted to have at least one room done so that we just had somewhere that was calm in the house when everything else was chaos. We literally did everything in here. Everything is new. We even put in the picture rails because they had been stripped out. One lovely little thing in this house is this is the only room with a central light. Every other room has spotlights. So we've made the most of this and put some Victorian cornicing back in. We love the bay window. The light is amazing. I knew I wanted it green because for me green is just the calm colour. So I knew I wanted that. So we did the walls. We put quite a lot of jute stuff in, the rug, the mini little ottoman. And then we used a mix of wood textures just to try and deformalise the space. Because as much as this is a sort of slightly smarter space, I didn't want it to feel too done. The fireplace was already here, but we repainted it. This is, I think, London Stone by Farrow & Ball. The Matisse print we got from John Lewis. I took a while to find the art in this room. I knew exactly what I wanted in my head and I couldn't find it for ages. Finally picked these up at Ocker. This map here is really special because it's my great-grandfather's RAF map. So this was the map that he had when he was a pilot in the war, which means quite a lot to us. And what is quite cool is I live in a little hamlet and it actually does have the little hamlet on it. So we really like it. We have a lot of stuff. We travel a lot, and we try to always bring stuff back with us. So just on these shelves alone, we have, I think this guy was from South Africa. These guys were actually, I think they're actually from a bar. I'm not sure I'm supposed to have taken those, but we own these now. We have all sorts of candles and stuff. Like I'm a big one for, there's no such thing as too many candles lit. So we have all sorts from here. A few of these are antique, and then this is actually quite new from Addison Ross. We have the rechargeable lamp. I just really think it looks lovely to have proper light coming from the fireplace, which is nice. And then we have this elephant that came from India. Actually came from Delhi airport, but I suppose that's not important, so there's that. And then just family pictures, picture from our wedding, a few pictures of my sister and I growing up. Yeah, there's just all sorts here. We've got a little bit more William Morris. Of course, you have to have some Willoughbow in an English home or an American home. That print seems to be everywhere now. And then these olive cushions, these olive leaf cushions are from Elizabeth Scarlett. I just really like how it kind of ties the botanicals to the wall and stuff. And These are from Soho Home. Yeah, we just tried to get as much texture in here to just really calm the room down and just make it feel like you can just crash out in here. So, yeah. The sofa, love this couch. It probably is a little bit low for the room, but we just love it. The ottoman was custom made, so it's so big that we can pull it in, and in the winter we just have duvet days in here and just binge watch Netflix all day. This I picked up in a flea market. It's actually a Swedish bread container. When I'm on Instagram, it's always the piece that people ask about more than anything. Probably be quite easy to make, to be honest, but yeah, it took a while for us to find anything that fitted onto this because this is so huge. The curtains are from John Lewis. I think you can really tell that this room was the first room I did because I was quite pared back and probably a little bit timid to use patterns and things. So I went for something very simple and neutral. If I was redoing this space, I'd probably be a bit braver and put a pattern in, but we do really like these. For such a big window, I think we didn't want anything overbearing because it's kind of like 1/4 of this room is window. So yeah, so it kind of works. In terms of how we laid this room out, the sofa only fitted there. So that was that. We did actually put this cabinetry in, had this done, so it kind of made the natural place for the TV. And then in terms of the chairs, I bought one to start with, placed it in the bay window and realised it was way too small, so we ended up getting another one, and it works really well. Like, this room is the Christmas room. We have like the big tree here and it's all really lovely, and it's just a really lovely family space. We're big fans, big fans. My design style is mainly centred around wanting a house to feel like a home. I never want anyone to feel like they can't put a mug down on a surface. That's one of our house rules here. My husband and I were quite lucky in that we do like the same kind of style. It's all quite muted tones, and then we use artwork and accessories to kind of pull colour through and kind of bring our own personalities out. So now we'll just go across the hall to the snug. So this is our snug, or music room, or piano room, because it has the piano in it. My husband and I are both quite musical, particularly my husband. He's one of those annoying people who plays everything. But we did everything in this room. We put in all the cabinetry. The house didn't have any storage because it had almost been extended to 1 inch of its life. It meant that anything that was a cupboard was now like a bathroom or something. So we didn't actually have a single cupboard in the house. So we had to kind of come up with that. We love books, my husband's record collection as well. But actually when we got married, we asked that everybody gave us a coffee table book as a guest and wrote inside why they chose it for us. So that's why there's all of those along there. And it's pretty cool. You can just come in here and read one of those on a Sunday. We have all sorts, from a book on chickens, which I still don't really understand why we've got, to things that travel books, wine books, recipe books, all sorts. Quite a lot of Wes Anderson. You'll have a lot of David Bowie. I found this fireplace on the street. It was from a Marylebone tenement house, and it cost me, I think it was £100 for the whole thing, including the slate bottom. Our builder let out an audible sigh when he saw this, so we got him to fit it. I absolutely love it. We've painted it the same colour as the fireplace in the other room, just so that there's continuity. Again, we put in the cabinetry, and then art in here, I guess, is quite a big thing. We absolutely love Keith Haring, and this is a blow up of a David Bowie record cover. So we did that ourselves and had that printed. There's a lot of music stuff in here. This piano is my husband's pride and joy. He loves it. Moving this was an entire operation that we apparently needed specialists for, so I don't know. We've got a lot of music on the wall. We've got Mumford, Elton. No house is complete without an Elton picture in my view. And then here we have the sheet music from Billy Joel playing in Sydney for Piano Man. That was a present my husband gave me. All sorts of stuff. David Shrigley, the artist here with the rhino, big fan of him. We have, oh, this poster came from a Paris street market. I worked in Paris for a while and I love going back there. So anything French is all me. I'm all over it. A Beatles picture, I just quite like it. It's a bit different to the classic kind of them crossing a zebra crossing. I just really like it. So yeah. The goal with this room was for it to just be super relaxing. In winter, this is just a really easy place to spend time. It's where we watched a lot of sports, films. It's where we'll just have dinner on our laps in the evening. It's just super chilled out. We'll play on the piano. That makes it sound a little bit like we live in a movie, but one of us will play on the piano. We hate playing music in front of each other, which is a bit of a weird quirk. So if my husband's away, I'll play, but if he's back, I won't. Mainly because he's a lot better than me and I don't really want to admit that. We just wanted it to feel cozy in here. We didn't put the picture rail in because we didn't want to formalise the room. We just wanted people to just literally just be able to just relax in here. Furniture in here. This sofa, we will replace this sofa at some point, but it's so comfortable that we just are going with it. Like, I can't even remember where it's from in terms of the cushions and stuff. It's just more the merrier, because the whole point is you just make yourself as comfy as possible in here. More Morris, more Elizabeth Scarlett. Lizzie actually made these for us as a wedding gift. And then this chair, I like working from here. It's quite a nice chair to just sit in. I love the orange colour. I've got my weighted blanket, my baby. We didn't want things to match too much, so this ottoman is just basically a beanbag. When you have a young dog, you cannot be precious about things. So, I mean, no dogs on the furniture. It's going really well. But I like mixing and matching and not caring too much about things being too themed. Now we'll go upstairs and I'll show you the primary bedroom and suite. Oh, hello. This is our primary bedroom. When we moved into the house, this entire room was navy, even the windows. So it felt quite dark. It's also at the back of the house and it doesn't get a huge amount of natural light. We were actually really restricted on where we could put things because there's lots of windows which are quite low on the wall, and there's a fireplace which didn't look like that when we moved in, and odd placements of radiators in this house, which is very much on the list to sort, and we've just not got there. The bed, I mean, you've got to have a good bed. So we bought this pretty early on. This is actually a rug, and I didn't look at the size and when it arrived it was way too small, so I had it framed and it looks quite cool above there. I wanted to have a lot of fabrics in this space, and as much as I knew I wanted everything to be green so it fitted together, I didn't want to be too precious with it. So we've got stripy linen, we've got some English, or probably should say Scottish tweed, I think. And then we have the stripe repeat from the cushions here on the chair. And you'll see there's another one of those chairs in the ensuite. This is a Sanderson fabric that's actually a linen. So we had it backed so it's blackout. Repeated the botanicals here. This is from Cox & Cox, I think. It's full of stuff. We're quite lucky because we have dressing rooms, so we don't need to have a wardrobe in here, which would actually, I think, there's nowhere for it to go, so that's quite a good thing. But shall I take you through to the dressing room and the bathroom? You're about to see the most unnecessarily big bathroom, but I'll explain why in a minute. This now, in terms of where we are in the house, we're now sitting above the garage extension. We have this dressing area. These were all orange pine when we moved in, so we got rid of that straight away. Don't look too closely at the rug because this is where the puppy lived when she first came to join us, so we need to get rid of the rug and we haven't got there. Then we kept the linen going, the same print throughout, and it runs into the bathroom. So the bathroom is really big. We thought about re-sectioning it up and putting a utility upstairs, but because there's no natural hallway, it just meant that there would be sort of like room after room, and it wouldn't have a great flow to it. It was already a bathroom, but the only thing that we've kept is the bath. Everything else is completely new. I wanted this room to feel like a hotel bathroom. This was my bougie in the house. This is what I wanted. I've always wanted to have an armchair in the bathroom, so we repeated the armchair from the bedroom in here. I just really like hanging out in here. One of us will be in the bath, the other one will just tell us about our day and things like that. We have these sloped walls, which made sort of positioning a little bit more awkward. So we put in this shower unit, which is very helpful and works well for the space. There's a lot of hidden storage you're not allowed to see behind here. My husband works in music, and he's often on the road, on buses and things like that, and grabbing showers here, there and everywhere. So I wanted him to be able to have a really nice shower at home. He's also really tall, so that's why this is so high up. Whereas my thing for the space was, we already had the bath, and I'm a bath person, but was the storage, because there was no storage in here at all. There was a lot of spray foam, and it was quite strange. We had this custom made. Simply Bathrooms helped us with this bathroom, and I think the unit was made by Parker Howley. I found these knobs actually in a place in LA. I can't remember where, I think it's Shop Amber, I think, in LA. I really believe that black works like punctuation in a space, so it's your kind of full stops and your commas and things. So I try to use black in rooms just to tidy a room up. So you've got like the black toilet seat, a few black metal details. This towel radiator was a little bit of an extravagant purchase. It was handmade by a guy in Lincolnshire in England. This is an old sewing box, but works really well. Move it over to the bath, and it's got all my stuff in it. The flooring is slate, which is a bit of a nod to Wales again, because Welsh slate is the best, if you ask me. We repeated the check that's in the bedroom with the rug. It's not quite the right size, but I just haven't got there yet. These sconces are from Pookie. I think they have the best range of sort of IP regulation lights. They're really good. I wanted lights that were practical, so if you were getting ready in here, they worked, but also kind of served as mood lighting if you were in the bath. So it means we don't have to have the full lights on very often. I'm not a big light person, which when you live in a house with so many spotlights is challenging. And also just the texture. We put in the tongue and groove paneling here just to break up, because there's just so much wall. We didn't want to tile it because I thought that would make it feel quite sterile. I like bathrooms to feel like rooms and not sterile spaces, or sort of, I like rooms that just feel like this design doesn't change when you go into bathrooms. So we tried to make it as sort of the same as the feel of the rest of the house as possible. Last but not least, we're in the office stroke dressing room. This is just my room. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. We're lucky enough to have some spare room, so it meant that I'm able to have this space, which is brilliant. I work from home most of the time, so this is this setup over here. I have my schedule there, which actually is just not accurate at all. Like, I don't follow that at all, but it's good to have a goal. Dottie sleeps in this window on this horrible old cushion that I really want to get rid of, but it's her favourite thing in the world. So any other cushion I put there, she just wouldn't sit there. So I've had to give over. Then this is my sort of makeup getting ready counter. And then this whole wall is storage for clothes and suitcases and everything here. I can't open a cupboard because we've had to tidy up a lot for you guys to be here. So I'm a bit worried what will fall out if I open them. But there we are. There she is in the window. This is, yep, she won't sleep anywhere else, on anything else. So that's her. We have my guitar that my husband bought me for my birthday, but I got myself the dog. So I'd be lying if I said that this has been played much, because I haven't exactly had a huge amount of time. And then this trunk, I love. It's something my husband, this is my husband's. I don't know where it's come from, probably some tour somewhere at some point. We did use it as a coffee table in our old house, and it lives here now. It's normally about piled this high with clothes, so there's that. And the wallpaper, I knew I wanted this wallpaper in the house before we even moved in. It is by a lovely Scottish company. A lady called Fiona runs it. It's called Bluebell Grey. I love it, really love it. I'm thinking about changing the woodwork in here to blue, just to make it a bit less white, because this wall is all completely white, but we'll pick our battles. This artwork here is actually from an event that I went to in Italy, in Lake Como, and this was the menu. I love just framing sort of inexpensive stuff. It's my favourite thing to do. And this is an illustration of the villa we stayed at, which was the invitation for the trip. So, yeah. Home is everything to me. It always has been. My parents, I think actually, without doing it consciously, I've kind of mirrored the style of the house that I was brought up in. My parents live in a Victorian red brick house. So I think when we saw this came up, both of us just instantly went, yeah, that's our house. For me, it's just about being comfortable at somewhere that you can just relax and be yourself and have loads of family time. It's been lovely having you, Homeworthy, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Eliza Morrill. Welcome to our home in Columbus, Georgia. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Eliza Morrill. Welcome to our 1873 Victorian in Columbus, Georgia. I'm so excited to show you around. I grew up here in Columbus, Georgia. I'm a professional photographer and co-own a digital marketing agency. I also create content and am mom to 4 children, so I wear a lot of hats. I live here with my husband, our 4 kids, and our English Bulldog, Bowie, who snores a lot, and our new kitten, Ruby, and we just love it here. So I grew up here in Columbus, but to be candid, really always saw myself moving far away and never coming back. But my husband and I, he is from upstate New York, moved back here, and honestly, we love it so much. It has been the best experience. I love Columbus for a lot of reasons. The biggest, I'd say, is that you have kind of the big city feel in a small town. We're right here on the river, so there's a lot to do as far as whitewater rafting goes. You can go to great shows at the State Theater of Georgia. You can go to great concerts at the River Center. And one big thing that we really love about Columbus is our neighborhood. We live in the historic district downtown, which is a very walkable neighborhood. Columbus in and of itself is not the most walkable town, but the downtown area is definitely an exception to that rule. So we really love our neighborhood. Welcome to our home. This is the entry hall, and I really just wanted this to be cozy but functional. We do have 4 children. This is our main entrance, which was not the plan originally, but plans change. So I really wanted to put a chest here. A lot of hidden storage is very important around this house. Historic homes are not known for their storage, so we just created it where we could find it. I got this for $60 off of Facebook Marketplace. It had a bit of an odor when we purchased it. I had to go through a few different means of removing that odor, but I'm happy to say that it's gone now. These are paintings that my uncle did of the river here in Columbus, so that's just a really special piece. A lot of the art in our home has a special story behind it, which is really important to us, because as you will find, we really love art. Moving to this, we say that this is my grandmother. It's actually not. I don't really know who she is, but my grandfather bought it because it looked like my grandmother. So you heard it here first, it's not really her. But it's really nice when I'm walking out the door every morning just to see her. And then above that is a piece that my late brother did in high school. So I just love that they hang here together. I love this antique pine desk. Some family friends were downsizing. I happily took it off their hands. And I just love antique pine. I think it is so warm and it just has such a great grain to it. And one of the first things that I noticed and loved about this house was the bay window, and it just fits perfectly here. And it was also a great spot for this chair, which is such an interesting piece. My parents actually bought this at an auction house outside of Philadelphia, which is where I was born. It just has the coolest, it's in the raw, so it's never been stripped. I am luckily past the point of worrying about my children like gnawing on what I'm sure is lead paint. Not really, just kidding. But I love this chair. I just think it has so much character. And before this home, I could never keep a plant alive, but this house has such great light. It is what I noticed first when I walked in. So you will see a lot of plants. It's become kind of a hoarding situation, and I will make no apologies. I love rugs, especially vintage Persian rugs. Almost every rug in this house is from eBay. It's not from a fancy estate sale or a fabulous dealer. 99% of them are from eBay. I am always scrolling and looking for deals and just kind of moving them in and out and giving them to friends when they no longer fit. And I love this piece. It was in the dining room of our last home. And it's just so fun and bright. It's also a really unique shape and size, and I just think it works really well in here. These pieces were a gift from a client. They were sitting in her warehouse. She knew that I loved Asian art, and she said, take these with you. And they really fit perfectly on what is kind of an awkward space. And I think it just really kind of balances them, and I love it. This mirror was in my grandmother's condo outside of Philadelphia. And I don't really know if there's a story behind it, but every time that I see it, I think of her and spending my summers in Philadelphia, so it's super special to me. This piece is so special to me. We have a lot of portraits in our home. I just love being surrounded by the people that I love. This is my brother who sadly died about 15 years ago. And this portrait was commissioned when he was in high school. And my mom has a big watercolor of this one, but this was commissioned for my grandfather. And this is our family dog Honeymoon, who he loved. And it sat unframed in my childhood closet for many years. I was honestly just kind of too afraid to take it to the framers. I didn't want anything to happen to it. And so I had been scouring for a frame that would fit it. And on Facebook Marketplace, I found the frame, and I met a woman at the McDonald's parking lot in Phoenix City, Alabama. And she opened up her minivan trunk, and I immediately thought, oh my gosh, this is not what I was thinking it was, but she was so kind to meet me there, so I handed her the cash and I left. And I put it in the frame, and it just looked, something was off. It was beautiful, but it just wasn't what I was looking for. So for a few months, it just hung here. And then I realized somebody had painted the frame brown. So I went to the shed and got some mineral spirits, and I just wiped it off, and now it's gold, and it has this really strange green velvet that I think my brother would think was hilarious because he was a very hilarious guy. And it's just so special to me. So I love seeing him when I come and go every day. This is Bowie, our English bulldog, who you will probably hear snoring throughout this tour. She definitely rules the roost. We love bulldogs. She's our second bulldog. We're big Georgia fans, but also bulldogs are the best. And she, honestly, this is her house. It really is. That's just the truth. So we really always wanted to live in this neighborhood for many reasons, but it was honestly just cost prohibitive for us. We have 4 kids. We need a lot of space, but I've always loved historic homes. I grew up in a historic home. Everyone in my family loves them, so it kind of runs in the family. So I used to find myself just driving around the neighborhood looking for the biggest house in the worst condition, because I knew that's probably all that we could afford, and would just knock on doors and was always told no. But one day I knocked on this door and I introduced myself and said, would you ever be willing to sell your home? And he said, you know what? Actually, I would. So I texted my husband and I said, hey, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing. If you don't hear from me in 20 minutes, come and save me. And instead of radio silence, he got a barrage of photos of a falling in home with busted out windows, caving in walls, and shocking to everyone, including myself, he said, oh my gosh, wait, I think this is our home, when can I see it? So we bought the home in 2019, and it was a 3-year renovation, which was horrible, but we live here now and we love it. This is our kids' playroom. It may have felt like a risky choice to put our playroom right as you enter the home, but functionally it was the best thing. Eventually, this will probably become like a more formal sitting area, but for now, it is generally a lot messier than this. This is an IKEA dresser that my husband painstakingly recovered with peel and stick wallpaper, which I think just really elevates the space, and it gets so much use. This is just chock full of toys. And this piece right here is one of my favorite things in the home. My friend Teal Duncan Henley is an incredible artist, and she painted this beautiful portrait of our home and the kids playing in the front yard, and I just love it so much. And then these are her lampshades. She is just so wildly talented, so I love having a piece of her in our home. Over here, this is a pull-out sofa from Facebook Marketplace. It fits perfectly. I wash the covers all the time because our kids love to pull out the sofa and have a family movie night in here all the time. It was really important for me for this to obviously be a kid-friendly space, but to be a little sophisticated so that when people do arrive, it doesn't just scream chaos all the time. And I just love this sofa. Like I said, we have a lot of plants around the house. And then this piece above, a friend was moving out of her house. She was getting rid of it. And I said, ooh, I will take it from you. It is spray painted blue. And I think it just adds a little bit of fun to a playroom. So this right here was actually in the entry hall when we first bought the home, but it was caving right here. The whole house was, it was starting to sink. So we needed to A, open the space up, but B, support this structurally. The plan was to close the doors and block the mess, but the doors don't close. That's just the nature of a historic home. This is out of an old elementary school here in Columbus. Our kids obviously draw on it all the time. Lots of hidden storage down here. And then this is chock full of board games and puzzles and books. This was in my grandmother's home, and I remember always playing cards around her table, and it was absolutely ruthless. It was never a, oh, you're 5, I'll give you a break. It was, you're 5 and you're bad at this game and now you're out. So we're a pretty ruthless board game family and card game family, and when this opens up on a Friday night, you know it's going down. So when we first bought this home, one of the hardest things to do was to distinguish what was original and what had been added at a later time. And one thing that had been added at a later time was a very large arch over the living space, which was not original. But we wanted to reincorporate that back in, so we added a few arches throughout the house. This is the first one, and it leads you from the playroom into our living room. So come on with me. So anything that could possibly be done in a renovation, we did. We took it down to the studs, all new electric, all new plumbing, new roofing. We had to restore a lot of windows. And then the back of the home was an addition, which was not structurally sound. So we had to remove that addition and we replaced it with a 2-story addition. So it was really important to us that we kept the historic charm of the house while making it functional for our family, but more importantly, structurally sound and something that would last another 150 years. So usually one of the first things that people ask about when they walk into our home are these fiddly fig trees. We have several of them, and I don't know if you ever had them before, but they are very fickle, and it is truly not me. It is the light in this home. We have a lot of indirect bright light. I do sometimes feed them my black coffee when I'm not done with it for the day. It seems to make them happy, but really they just are so large and luscious, and I love them dearly. I love this coffee table so much. I searched for years for this table, and I am pretty good about not buying something in the meantime. I usually just wait until I find what I really like. And this was $150 off of Facebook Marketplace. And I couldn't wait, so I went in my dad's truck in the pouring rain to pick it up, really thinking that it would fit in the backseat of my dad's truck. However, I was wrong. And this sweet man helped me in the pouring rain fit it in the back of the truck. And he was going to use his cash to take his wife to a reptile convention in Atlanta. And so he got to go to the reptile convention, and I got this beautiful statement piece, which I think really just ties the room together so well. I used to not dislike these brown couches. I really love them, but I just wanted to recover them with a different fabric. But now I think the brown actually looks so good together, and I just love this table. These sofas actually got from a friend off of Facebook Marketplace. And this piece right here is probably one of the nicer pieces in our home. So my great uncle was an antique dealer in Indiana, and my grandfather bought it from him, and it was restored outside of Harrisburg. And now it lives here. And I really love, I have this black and white photo of my grandparents at some meeting in Washington, DC. And I just love having their photos and pictures around. Sadly, none of the fireplaces in this home are working, but all the mantles are original, and so filling them up has been so fun, especially around Christmas. It gets very festive around here. This is actually a plant that I got off of an online estate sale. Didn't know you could do that, but you can. And then this piece right here is one of my favorite things in our home. It was actually done by a childhood friend of mine, Mary Margaret Monsees. She is a resin artist in Savannah, Georgia, and she took these hydrangeas and pressed them and then covered them in resin. And I just think that they're so cool. It's such a statement piece. And then above that is a painting by Booth Malone, a local artist that my brother picked out. And Bowie's always making herself known. So this is the frame TV, which I absolutely love. We switch out the art pretty regularly. A lot of times my children will find something bizarre or a really unflattering photo of me and put it up there as our daily art. My husband actually made this frame using crown molding, and then I just covered it in rub and buff. And then above that is an Aaron Gregory, who is another local artist here in Columbus. There is so much artistic talent in this town, and I love being surrounded by it. So this piano is an 1873 Steinway. It is the same age as the house, and I saw it on Facebook Marketplace. Somebody posted it and said, you can have it if you come and get it. So I hired movers, and it sat in storage for 3 years, and it just fills an otherwise kind of awkward space so well. It is relatively untunable, but still very fun for my kids to play on. And then I love these lamps. So really, I love the shades. These lamps are actually from Amazon. They're just table lamps, but the shades I got for $3 at an estate sale. And I think that is such a great hack. Finding a base that you may not love, but pairing it with a really fun shade. I buy lamps all the time, either for the base or the shade. If I don't like, one or the other, I'll just switch it out. And they're generally very reasonably priced at estate sales and also Goodwill. So definitely check that out the next time you're in the market. During our renovation, everything that could have possibly gone wrong went wrong. It was absolutely horrific, and it was a really hard time for our family. There were a lot of times when we didn't feel like we were going to be able to move in. And then personally, we have 4 children, and our 2 youngest children had a lot of health challenges during that time. We had an open heart surgery, a brain surgery, an airway surgery, and many, many months spent in the hospital. And so during that time, I would be at the hospital with our younger 2, and my husband would be working from home during the pandemic with our older 2 in a very small rental house. And it was just a really hard time for us, which means that we will never ever take for granted the gift that it is to A, have everyone under the same roof together, and B, have a home to share. We're now in the dining room, one of my favorite areas in the home, and it has a lot of really special pieces in here. The first is the chandelier that was my grandfather's. He actually bought it in Austria. He had it shipped to the US and it hung in his home in Harrisburg until he gave it to my sister, and it hung in her home in Columbus, which is also a historic home. And when she moved to Atlanta, she gifted it to me. And putting it back together is a feat unlike anything you've ever experienced in your life, but it was definitely worth it in the end. It has a lot of candles, as you can see, and they will never stand up straight no matter what I do. So it just adds to the charm and the character, and I love it. One thing that was really important to me in this home was not making it feel too stuffy. In our last house, it was easy for me to add Victorian furniture and not have it feel too grandma, for lack of a better term, because it was a mid-century modern home. But when you have a Victorian, it really, for me, was important to kind of mix more rustic items with more antique or Victorian items. So this farmhouse table is one of my favorite finds. A friend was moving town. It was in her storage unit, and it is the perfect length for our family and to have guests. I paired it with these bamboo chairs that I found in an estate sale and these varnish in chairs. Varnish Collection is a local company founded by some sisters who are friends of mine, and they have a lot of rattan furniture that is super cool. So I love having these here. This right here is one of my most prized possessions. I have a lot of steals and deals in this house. This is probably my only splurge. I found this at auction, and it's an original oil. It's a reproduction of an Audubon, but it was painted, I believe, in the 30s. Don't quote me on that. But it is one of my favorite pieces. This is such a specific size, this area, and so finding something that would fill it and add character and charm was quite the task. So when I saw this, I knew that I had to have it, and it is one of my favorite pieces. I paired it with some Majolica oyster plates that I got from my sister. She has an interior store in Atlanta, The Acquired Home, and she really helps me source a lot of my plates. And then we tiled over the bottom of the fireplace. I got all of this Italian tile from Dirt Cheap for $7.99 several years ago. And then we chose to paint the screen just to match the tile and let the painting pop. And I really love how it turned out. This piece came out of my grandfather's home in Harrisburg, as did the mirror and the lamps. They're really just so beautiful and so special to me for a lot of reasons. I love the lion poles, and the feet actually had to be trimmed off because a previous owner couldn't fit it in their home. So the feet of the buffet are trimmed off, but we love it just the same. I got this piece at an estate sale. And same for these little guys, added some ribbon. These were a Goodwill find. Oh, I was hoping they still had the price tags on them. I think I paid $2 for these. These are all Goodwill books. I love to take the jacket covers off of books and just pay attention to the spine cover that is there, and I use them all the time. If you look closely, you'll see kind of some odd titles. It's probably because they're from Goodwill and I haven't actually read them. So this little bar cart my sister gave me for Christmas one year, and I have paired it with all these decanters that I found. I think I got all of them at Goodwill, actually. These candlestick holders, I found it in an estate sale as this little table. I've got all of my favorite El Guapo bitters here. We love hosting our friends, especially our neighborhood friends. We have such a great group on this street, and it's kind of a, hey, what are you doing Friday night? Come on over. So I really wanted this to be kind of accessible for everyone. Make the drink that you want. We've got ice buckets. Like I said, we've got bitters, and I just want it to kind of be an inviting space. I don't want anybody to feel like they can't grab what they want. Obviously, I'll make it for them if they want, but it's important to me as a host for my guests to feel welcome and like they're in their own home. I'm not a professional interior designer. I have no design background, and to be honest, half the time I really feel like I have no idea what I'm doing, but I feel like that kind of adds to the charm. And I think that over time, when you layer and you collect, if you love something, it's probably gonna work out. And I think that in today's world, it's really easy to look online and think, oh my gosh, my house doesn't look like that, and I don't have the kind of money to do something like that. But the reality is, home takes time, and not everybody has a professional background or the ability to hire a professional. So really you can have a beautiful house on a budget is my belief. And yeah. One thing that I feel like some designers shy away from is family photos and kid photos, but I love family photos and kid photos. I'm a professional photographer, so sometimes it's a cobbler's children wear no shoes situation, but this gallery wall is kind of my answer to that. It is a lot of kind of slice of life photos of my kids. I don't know that really any of them are posed, but they are just sweet memories and reminders of how little they used to be, because they really do grow up so fast. And I have used IKEA Riba frames. They are my favorite. They are so reasonably priced and they really look fantastic on a gallery wall. I paired them with these that I got with my sister at Mart in Atlanta. And then I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret, okay? This is a Goodwill frame, and I just painted a random squiggle on the back of it. Like the existing art, I just flipped it around and did a blue squiggle because I felt like the space needed a blue squiggle. So that is my confession at this time. But I love this gallery wall. I love that I walk by every morning and I see my kids. Like I said, they really do grow up so fast. And I feel like family photos are so important to have in a home. And I just love them. So this is where the original part of the home stops. And when we first purchased the home, it had a 1-story addition that was not at all structurally sound. I mean, we're talking disintegrating cinder blocks. So we took that addition off and we added a 2-story addition, which houses our kitchen and our primary suite. So come on in to the kitchen. This is our little coffee bar area. This gets a lot of use and I love this space. I love this tile. This is on clearance at Lowe's for $7. And I just love the pop of blue, just a little bit of color to add something. This is one of my favorite pieces. This hung in my parents' house growing up. It's just a little Pied Piper and I think it's so fun and whimsical. And I'm a big coffee mug collector, so got a lot of those in there. My grandparents' crystal, and just kind of a nice hodgepodge of old and new in here. So one thing that I really wanted in our kitchen was natural light to kind of match the rest of the home. So I wanted as many windows as we could fit and a Dutch door, and we delivered. So this kitchen, you know, we have 4 kids, so it has a lot of use. It had to be very functional, and we do cook a lot. So the cabinetry was really important, that it was beautiful but also functional. And I scoured the internet high and low for the best RTA or ready to assemble cabinets. And we ended up using Cabinet Joint, which has, in my opinion, the most customizable options for cabinets. And they were great with working with us to A, make it beautiful, but B, super functional for our family. So really no square inch is left unused in here. This stove, we have a friend who is an incredible chef, and this was sitting in his storage unit for several years, and he gifted it to us. And so this, we actually measured out these windows based on this stove. So we had it restored, and it's a little quirky, but we love it. My husband and boys cook pancakes every Saturday morning right here on this griddle. And I cannot tell you how often we use this oven. It gets a lot of use. The range hood was actually built by my dad. So he lives in Columbus now, but before that he lived in Wisconsin, and he built it in his garage, disassembled it, packed it in suitcases, and brought it down to us because he is an angel from heaven and so crafty. So we then covered it in drywall and then added these plates. I love these plates so much. So the center plate is actually a funny story. I was at an estate sale with a friend, and you see a preview a few days before things go live. And I loved this lemon plate. I had to have this lemon plate, but I get there, we're there 2 hours early. We're number 40 in line. We're not gonna get the lemon plate. So we're in line with our purchases. We got a few things, and she says, I'm just gonna take another lap. and lo and behold, if she does not return with the lemon plate. And she found it on some random bathroom wall, and it now hangs here, my pride and joy. It's so beautiful. The smaller Majolica plates I got off of eBay, and then the larger plates are VA-Tree chargers that a friend helped me source. I love a cafe curtain, and because I wanted to keep the natural light but have a little bit of privacy when necessary, I used this beautiful fabric by my friend Luli Wallace. She's an incredible artist and textile designer. And it is this really cool pecan pattern, which is, you know, very Southern. And I love the soft blue. And I think it just really adds to the space and makes it even more beautiful. So as I mentioned, I love a rug. The thing about rugs in the kitchen is that I personally don't want to spend much money on them because I know that they're going to have pasta sauce on them in 5 business days. So I got every rug in the kitchen off of eBay. I think this one was $45. It has actually been here for so long because it hides so much. And I absolutely love it. And it just has, you know, you can be barefoot in here and it doesn't feel cold. I just love it. We actually went with marble on our island, which is a very risky decision for a family with 4 kids, but it is held up so well. I don't mind the etching. Knock on wood, it has not stained, but it just adds such a cool, natural stone look. And if it gets destroyed, I can just have it rehoned down the road. Hopefully never, but the option is there. I also really wanted soapstone, but it was just not in the budget. This is black granite, and I honestly love it more than soapstone. It is not as temperamental. It's basically indestructible, and it was, I think, 1/5 of the price. So this was just such a good choice for us. These pendants, I kind of wanted to add something a little more modern in here. I love the kind of the bone outside and the brass interior, which lends itself to the other brass in the kitchen. And I just think they look really nice, and they add kind of a soft light at the end of the day when, you know, you're cleaning up and closing down the kitchen. Just adds a nice little mood lighting. So one thing that I really wanted to do in this home was A, maximize storage, and B, take advantage of the ceiling height. So this ceiling height is the same as the rest of the main floor in the home. And this is what we call the kitchen hutch. So these are RTA cabinets through cabinet joint, and they, along with Catherine Kimmel, helped us design this kind of floor to ceiling storage area. So we use it as a workspace. I love a cookbook. They are all over our kitchen, and I'll kind of sit here and plan out meals. All of our kids' art is in here, and I just love having a bunch of storage in here. It's so functional. I think it really just adds a little bit of grandeur to the space. We went with a new gray for the perimeter cabinets, and then navel, which is a deep kind of navy blue for the island. And I love how they just complement each other, and I think it just makes the space look warm and inviting. As you know, I love portraits. This is Winnie, our last bulldog. She was so sweet. My friend Katie Jacobson is an incredible local painter, and she did this portrait of Winnie in front of our Christmas tree in our old house. And I just love seeing her every day. And then these are really cool historic etchings that came out of my friend's grandmother's home. She had an incredible home here in Columbus, and she was very kind to let me go through and pick a few things. And these are just so cool and special. Eventually, I'd like to take them up to the ceiling, but this is our starting point. And yeah. So after our very long 3-year renovation, the fun began, and that was time to design. I love vintage finds. I have a Facebook Marketplace problem. I love Goodwill and Salvation Army and hand-me-downs from friends and family, and that is really what I have filled this space with. So as I mentioned, we are definitely an art family, and gallery walls are something that I just love so much, but have always been very intimidated by them. Lucky for me, my husband loves things like measuring tapes and levels. And so he is responsible for putting the holes in the wall, and I'm responsible for telling him where to put things. So this was definitely a labor of love. It took several years for us to even have the courage to tackle it, but I'm so glad that we did because I just love how it looks. This piece right here is a print of Teal Duncan Henley, my friend that I mentioned earlier. And this is a frame from Goodwill. And I actually got rid of the mat and just added some glue dots to the back of it. And I love it. It is just so colorful and fun. She does such a great job with beaches, and I love to mix prints and originals and fun and funky and, you know, something a little more antique or somber. I think having a nice mix of things while trying to keep, you know, similar frames or one or two different styles of frames really helps the gallery wall feel put together and just add a little bit more depth. So this is Tippy. I have no idea who Tippy is, but this is an original sketch that I found in a Goodwill, and she was $4, and I was so sad that somebody just left their dog portrait there, so I felt like I had to take her home, and I added some rub and buff to the frame, and I think she's just so cute, and it has her name on it, and I just had to take her home. And then this right here is an original Lily Wallace, another great local artist and friend of mine. She occasionally releases these angel series, and my husband got this in memory of my brother, and it's just really special to me, so I love it. This is a little Teal Duncan Henley, and that is one of her colorful nudes, which I just love. I paired it with a Goodwill frame and painted the mattes white and pink to complement the print, and I think it turned out really well. This is actually by my mom, and I think it's just so pretty and fun. I got these guys for $1 each in an estate sale. Same with this, and really everything that you see here was either painted by a friend or found in an estate sale or a Goodwill. This is one of my favorite pieces right here. This was my dad's helmet when he was a volunteer firefighter outside of Philadelphia, and it hung in my room growing up. It was in my son's room for a while, got a little too much use, so now it's hanging up on the wall, and I think it's just a really fun way to add character and texture and dimension to a gallery wall. So when we were building this area, we had kind of this weird dead space between the return and the end of the wall. And so we decided to make it what we call Bowie's hidey hole, which when she's not sleeping in someone's bed, she'll sometimes humble herself and sleep in there. But we put this little Georgia Bulldog on top of it, and it's just a really cool little quirk of our home. This piece is really special to me. It was painted by my friend Katie Jacobson, and it is based off of a medium format film photo that I took of our children in the backyard of our rental home when we were renovating this house. And as I mentioned, this renovation was just a really hard time for us. And this, just for me, kind of represents that you can go through really tough things. Our son here was just relearning how to walk after his brain surgery. And so he was kind of, you know, a little unbalanced. And I love seeing this and just knowing that like things got better and we live here now. And it just reminds me of a really hard but important time in our life. So my grandfather was quite the character and had 5 dachshunds at all times. And when I say this man was obsessed with his dachshunds, like he would take out ads in the paper when it was their birthday, and he had like a whole room with dachshund-sized furniture in it. And he was buried with his dachshunds. Like the man loved dachshunds. So of course he commissioned this portrait of his, at the time, 6 dachshunds. And my husband, this is not my husband's favorite painting, but it might be mine. I think it is just so funny. I love the quilt that they're on. On the back, there is this like letter between the artist and my grandfather. He's like, oh, you know, like Smitty's ear is a little more brown there, and he just loved him so much, and I love looking at him every day. It's one of my favorite things. Throughout the house, you will find quite the mix of things. I inherited some antique pieces from my grandfather, but I also got things out of someone's minivan in a parking lot at the Piggly Wiggly. It really is a pretty eclectic mix. We love an IKEA hack. We love kind of DIYing things as best we can. And I think our home is a really good reflection of that. This is our daughter's room, and though I was quite a tomboy growing up, she is the girliest of girly girls, and she wanted a pink room, so that is what we did. I painted this mirror with some of her favorite things, and these are prints from a friend, Mary Margaret Monsees, who is a very talented artist who now lives in Savannah. We grew up together. And I have collected these brass bows for years and just find them at Goodwill all the time. And so I've incorporated those in here. And she loves knickknacks and she loves makeup. And so there's a lot of that in here. So this is the bed that I actually grew up in. And I originally had purchased a different bed for this room, but I just couldn't pass it up when my parents said, come get it or it goes away. So this is the four-poster that I grew up in. She loves it. And the original bed that I had bought had this really cool fabric. It was upholstered and it came with the bedding. And so I just took the bedding off of that and put it on here. This is such a special piece to me. It is by an artist named Harry Teague, who has since passed away, but he was a very prominent businessman who had a catastrophic stroke and lost a lot of his function, but found a love for folk art. So my parents bought this for me, I want to say when I was 9, and it was unframed until this spring when my husband and I got a wild hair to try to put it in an acrylic float frame ourselves, which was not like the best marriage building project that we've ever done, but I think it looks great and I'm happy that we did it, and now it finally has a home. So this rug is another eBay find. I love an eBay rug, and it really just checked all of the boxes. It was pink and fun and girly, and so she loves it. I love this original mantle and wanted to incorporate a lot of art on top of it. This is a print also by Teal Duncan Henley. And our daughter was born with a congenital heart defect and has spent a lot of time in the hospital and has had some pretty huge surgeries. And so I love this piece by local artist Helen Brooks of a heart, because she also has a special heart. These were my cowboy boots as a child, and they sadly cannot be worn anymore because they are so worn in, but I just love them. And it was really important for me to have a fun and functional room for our kids. Of course, I want it to be pretty, but I also want it to reflect them and what they like to do and who they like, which for my daughter is Taylor Swift. I also am a huge Swiftie, and so when she said that she wanted this in her room, I was just giddy because, it maybe is not like the typical designer room decor, but it is something that she loves, and so we added it. So designing a room for twin boys who are no longer little boys was a bit challenging. I wanted it to be fun, but a little grown up, but not too grown up. So this was the answer. One of them saw a ship painting and said, hey, I really like that. And we just kind of went with it. So I love this. We're big Georgia fans. Really everyone in my family went to Georgia. And so this was in my brother's apartment, so it hangs here now. And I wanted to tie in that like kind of pop of red. So these beds were a yard sale find by my sister. The trunks came off of Facebook Marketplace, and I think I got these little quilts at Home Goods. I paired them with just a typical sham and these really cute needlepoint pillows that I got at a yard sale. And this was in my dad's house growing up. It has been really sturdy and heavy duty for them, which is nice when you have twin boys. These lamps have a very funny story. I found them off of Facebook Marketplace and I asked for the dimensions and she said, oh, they're about knee high. And I said, okay, I'm on my way. So I met her in the parking lot of Piggly Wiggly in Phoenix City, Alabama. And all my friends were like, you're crazy, those are hideous. But I added some new lampshades and got some trim tape, and I really think they turned out well. I just love them. And then this, I actually found last week at Goodwill for $8. It's an original painting. I think it's so cool. And then these are IKEA curtains. IKEA curtains all the way. If you cannot afford custom drapes, which I cannot do 99% of the time, I just hot glued some grosgrain ribbon to them for trim, and I think they turned out really well. So the walls throughout the entire house are Delicate White by PPG, but I really like to start with white walls and then add a lot of art and texture and color on top of it, kind of as a blank canvas. But in both of our boys' rooms, we decided to go with this kind of blue trim. It's called Ghost Whisperer. And so I found these a bit unattractive bookcases on Facebook Marketplace, and we mounted them to the wall and I painted them the same trim color. And it's just been a cool addition to the boys' rooms because it lets them display all of their treasures, and they're big readers, and so they have all their books on display. And I just love these bookcases. This is our youngest son's room, and it probably has the best light in the house. It is right above the entry hall. This bed my dad grew up in, and this trunk was in his bedroom growing up, which is just super special. He loves toys of all kinds, so under his bed he has about 1 million toy boxes with all of his treasures. For bedding here, we just kept it simple. It's IKEA. These are IKEA little pillows, and then some estate sale finds for pillows. And I also found all of these tennis and badminton rackets at estate sales and just stuck them on his walls. I think they were 75 cents each, and they make just such a cool little statement piece. We continued the bookshelves here, and I really wanted to keep the things that he goes for most within reach. So all of his favorite books are at the bottom here, and things a little bit more breakable are at the top. He does still play with these, however, because they're so cool and they're his favorite. What home means to me is really just a soft place to land. It is a place where all of my family can be together, something that I will never take for granted. And you know, the world is tough. And when I walk through my door and when my children and my husband walk through this door, I just want them to feel safe and loved and surrounded by comfort. And that has really been the most important thing for me in designing a home, is that, you know, I want it to be beautiful, but really I just want it to be functional, and I want it to be cozy and safe, and a place for us to gather and live. Thanks so much for stopping by, Homeworthy. I loved showing you around my home. Until next time.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Kate. Welcome to our home in Chicago. Come on in and have a look around.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Kate Pierce. We're in my home in Evanston, Illinois. Our home was built in 1899, and Evanston is a really historic area for architecture. So we are in the Lakefront Historic District of Evanston. So a lot of homes around us have about the same age. They're around late 1890s. And it's a really fun place to just peruse the neighborhood and see the different architectural styles. Ours is a Queen Anne Victorian, and it was a complete gut job, really. I mean, we loved certain features of the home, and we tried to keep the character and the history of the home, but essentially we have gutted the interior, kept these beautiful rounded moldings and some other features. but it's been a complete fixer-upper. So when we moved here, we were moving from Long Island, New York, so we were doing a lot of virtual home shopping, if you will. So this home had been on our radar for a little while. We immediately knew it was the one. We had our girls with us, and at the time they were about 4 and 8 years old, and they absolutely just fell in love with the neighborhood and the home, and it was just one of those, you know, we knew it was right moments when we came to see this home. This is our entryway, and we are currently working on our entryway. So we have the staircase that I've been stripping for a year, but it's the original railing and newels and everything. So it's been a fun and absolutely horrible project all at the same time. We're painting, so this is a work in progress, but what's finished in here is this Sandberg wallpaper, and we'll also be doing a complementary wallpaper also from Sandberg under the chair rail, along the staircase. I think it'll really tie in beautifully. I wish it was done to show you. One of my favorite pieces is this Brutalist chandelier. I don't believe it's a Tom Green, but it's always been my dream to own a Tom Green Brutalist chandelier. And this one is such a similar style. And I found it for such a great price from one of my good vintage dealing friends here in Chicago. So there's not a ton else going on in this space, but you know, I have the tiger rug and the prints just to, well, when you're coming in, say, welcome, you're at Kate's house. So these are faux lemons that I had bought for Christmas. And I always talk about on the blog how Christmas doesn't have to always scream Christmas. And I love getting pieces that I can then repurpose throughout the year. So these are just faux lemons I got off of Amazon, and I did a fruit tree in our kitchen at Christmas time and repurposed them immediately after so I could feel like it's actually spring when it's not, or more like summer, I guess. So I just popped them in the vase there, and I just love the pop of cheery yellow when you walk in. It's perfect February color. So these hardwood floors are all original. It was really important to me that we kept these floors. When we had them refinished, the people refinishing them weren't super happy with me, and they said this is absolutely the last time that these could be refinished. They were only like 1/4 of an inch thick because they're so old and they had been sanded down too many times. So I'm holding on to them for as long as I can. And I've also noticed other homes in this neighborhood have exactly the same floors, the same width, with the nail heads on the top. And coming from Long Island, where there's a lot of historic homes, also, this is a type of floor I've never seen there. So I think it's probably specific to, if not Evanston, you know, this region of the country. Our biggest renovation this far has been our kitchen, and that was a complete gut job. We took down walls, we took a hallway away, we took a bathroom away. Completely kind of rearranged the back half of our first floor to make the kitchen a reality. And, you know, we broke ground in March and expected to be done late June. Ran into some contractor issues. We DIY'd a lot of it, but we were hoping to have a little more help with the contractor. But a lot of no-show days. We had to fill in for him. We had deadlines. We were working with brands. And we finally put the range in and finished the kitchen on December 18th. So not June as expected, but it came with a lot of challenges, that project, both just unexpected things you find in old homes. We had a huge leak. Our ceiling almost fell through right after we had sheetrocked the entire thing. So it wasn't the smoothest project, but now that it's done, we're just really grateful to have that space. So now I'd love to show you our living room, which is right off of our entryway. So here we are in the living room, which was the very first room that we tackled when we moved in. We just slathered it in this color. It's Current Mood by Claire. I get asked that question a lot. And it has some of my very favorite vintage pieces in here, like this travertine table I picked up on Facebook Marketplace back in New York when we lived there. And then there's this local shop, Jason Home in Chicago, that I bought this piece from. They obviously don't go together, but I love them together. And tons of vintage, again, that I have picked up over the years. This was another Facebook Marketplace purchase, this chessboard, this onyx chessboard. This was an estate sale score, this really cool tramp art vase. The popsicle stick lamp is another piece from my vintage dealer friend who also sourced that chandelier in the entryway for me. This piece is from one of my very favorite vintage places in Chicago called My Modern Oasis, but it's a vintage marble pedestal. One of my very favorite stories is how I came to own this desk. And this is a perfect example of Billy not knowing when anything new enters the house. I had gone to pick up something small, I don't even remember what it was, and I saw this for $50 at a Habitat for Humanity restore, and it's just this gorgeous veneered walnut mid-century modern desk. It was in great shape. I had no intention, and this is another thing when I say I don't know where a room is going and that the antiques and vintage just speak to me as I go. This is a perfect example. I never intended for a desk to be in this spot, but I'm so glad that it is there now. So this piece is another one I picked up for super cheap. I think it was 40 bucks at an estate sale back in New York. It broke on me. I intend to fix it one day, but it's nothing a little throw blanket can't handle for now. So this horse is another estate sale piece that I have a very strangely specific memory for estate sales, and this one was probably at least 5 or 6 years ago, and it's the same sale I got the mirror in the next living room from. It was a great sale. It was one of those diggers where you had to just dig through a lot of junk to find your gems, but there were plenty of gems to be had at that sale. So this sofa is one of the most asked about pieces in our entire home. It's from Interior Define, and it has this wonderful pink piping contrast on it. And another one of my favorite things about it is the storage. This lifts, and you can see all the junk under there that my kids throw under there at any given time. I'm often asked how I keep this space so clean, and I tell everyone it's usually not, but when I need to clean it up, it only takes a second because it can just all get thrown under the couch. So we have a turret on our house. So we have 4 rooms that have this round shape to it, and it has absolutely been a design challenge. When we first moved in, I had a round sofa in here, and that sofa is now in that room next to us. But it definitely can be a little bit tricky. I would say mimicking the shape of the room is a really big trick. This sofa, to be honest, I don't think is totally ideal for this space, but I just love the sofa. It's nice and it's big and it's functional. But then window treatments can also be a challenge because our windows themselves are actually curved. So Roman shades are not an option for this space. There were shutters on some of the windows when we moved in. I didn't love that aesthetic, so we went with drapery in here that we can close off if we want some privacy or to keep out some extra sunlight. So these are prints from Minted, which we had used for our speakeasy project in New York. If you've been following me on Instagram for a long time, you maybe have seen that project. I think it's somewhere on my Instagram feed still also. But I just love how they carry the colors from the sitting room just beyond it. That's another thing I talk about a lot with color is if you want to use a lot of color, make sure you're bringing color from adjacent rooms into the opposite room so it feels like it flows better together, like the pinks from that room in this art, and then I have green in there too to carry the green color from this room into that room. This rug was a vintage piece that I got from an Instagram friend, Two Sisters Rug. I've had that a long time, and it's a perfect scale to throw around the house, and I change up its location all the time. This rug is a new piece in this room, and it's from the Citizenry, and it's a hand-woven rug, and it is really soft and cozy, and I love how it lightens up the room because we have such a dark wall color throughout the space, and I love how the rug just lightens everything up. And the last piece I'll probably talk about in here is this planter, which might be my favorite piece in my entire house. I found that at an estate sale. I'd seen the picture for the estate sale online, And I ran into the house as soon as the estate sale opened, and I took the planter and I hid it in a closet because I wanted to find some other stuff too. But I can't remember the exact price, but somewhere around $100 for this beautiful ceramic Italian planter. That is one of my favorite pieces of all time. I think fundamentally I've always known that I wanted to be in an interior design adjacent field, I guess is how I would describe it. I know in my kindergarten yearbook, when I was asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said an archaeologist, which isn't this, but it's something similar. It's digging for past artifacts. There's always been that interest in history and the history of design. My academic background is in art history, so my undergraduate and graduate degrees are in art history. So I think art and creativity is something that has followed me throughout my life, or something that I pursued throughout my life. And though this was never where I exactly intended on ending up, I'm not surprised that I'm here. So though we have done a lot of work on the home, and as I mentioned, it's a complete fixer-upper, we really did want to preserve the character of this home. So one example is the brass hardware that is throughout the home, which did need a lot of love. I'm still not totally done with that process, but we've been cleaning up the hardware. At certain moments, it doesn't match the rest of the home. And the one really cool aspect of living in Evanston, where all the homes essentially are historic, is I can go to this place called the Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse, or even other places down in Chicago, and a lot of the homes will share the hardware that my home has, which is fairly unique, but because these are all period homes, it can be possible to find the hardware. My favorite story, though, is right in front of me right now is a pocket door that is definitely original to the home, but we didn't realize that it was there because there was molding covering it. And one day we were trying to put some electric in the wall here, and we took the molding off and found the pocket door. And this is another example of the hardware just being on one side of the door. And I shared it on Instagram, and someone in Chicago who followed me on Instagram found the exact pocket door hardware for me, and I was able to order it on eBay to match the other side. So it's been fun. It obviously would be easier to just switch out all the hardware to something new that would all match, but I just really am passionate about preserving the history of the home. So next, I'd love to show you our pink living room, which is just next to the green one. So here we are in the pink living room, which is the room that Billy and I really spend a whole lot of time in. And it is, again, filled with a lot of my favorite vintage pieces and antique pieces, but there's a good mix of new in here as well, like this coffee table from France & Sons. I just loved how it worked with the curved white sofa here. You know, sourcing sofa tables for a curved sofa can be a little bit tricky, but again, I think you just mimic the shape, and that's the safest way to go about that. And I love how the arches on it also kind of mimic the roundness of both pieces. One of my favorite stories is this piece. This was from probably one of the first estate sales I went to as an adult. I got dragged to plenty of estate sales as a child with my mother, but it was one of the first time I was sourcing pieces for my own apartment in Manhattan, and it was this sale in Greenwich Village. I don't think the apartment had been opened in 100 years. It was just bizarre. There was thick layers of dust everywhere. I think the newest piece in the home must have been from 1930 or 1940. But I got this for $5, and this barley twist at the bottom is just a really fun, unique twist, pun intended. And I get asked about this piece all the time, and everyone's blown away that I only paid $5 for it. This piece, I have two of these. One is currently broken, but Billy reupholstered this chair for me, and I got these off of auction. I think they were $100 each. And I think they're Adrian Pearsall chairs. I'm not 100% sure that they're authentic, but regardless, I love them. They're really comfortable, actually, and they, again, mimic the roundness, which these pieces, the sofa and this chair, were both in the round living room. And I'm just kind of always mixing things up to keep it fresh. But this space has its own roundedness to it, even though it has angles. It's not a perfectly square room either. So this curved sofa also works really well in this space. Another one of my favorite pieces is this one from Jason Home, that store I had mentioned earlier that's in Chicago. And they get a lot of European antiques into their shop. And I worked with them last year. They did some photography in our home for their catalog, and they gifted me this chair as a thank you. It's also one of my favorite pieces. I just love the tassel fringe on the bottom, or I think it's called bullion fringe technically. Also, another favorite is this mantle. This is not original to our home, which is a little bit obvious because of this gap between the original tiles and the mantle, which is something I hope to figure out how to make it a little more seamless down the road. But this is from Salvage One, which is this fantastic architectural salvage place down in Chicago. It's absolutely enormous. They have the coolest pieces taking out from all of these amazing homes in the area, from Oak Park and Evanston and Chicago. These historic homes just have these great pieces, and I'm really happy about being able to reuse and repurpose this piece in our home. And the mantle is decorated with some of my favorite vintage pieces also, but also some newer pieces like these. This is from one of my favorite ceramicists, Sierra Fabrications, and I have a lot of her pieces in my home. She's Vermont-based, and I highly recommend checking her out. She's incredible. This is a TV. So this is where our TV is in the home. I don't love having our TV above the mantle, but you can see with all of the curves and the entryways, there was really no other place to put it. But I wanted it to just feel like a piece of art when it's off. So we actually built this frame, and by we, I mean Billy built this frame so that it would really fit our aesthetic more than the Samsung frame TVs really come in. And we also switch out what art is on it depending on our mood and the season. And this, I'm actually kind of in the process of playing around with this as a gallery wall surrounding it. So the fireplace is working-ish. We had someone come to check it out for us when we first moved in, and we were told we can only burn one Duraflame log at a time. I guess Duraflame burns cleaner than wood. So we do use it all the time, more for the aesthetics and the actual heat that it would give off, but it is mildly functioning. We do hope to turn it into a gas fireplace down the road, but we were told we have to completely redo our chimney, and it's this huge project that it's not fitting in our budget anytime too soon. This mirror is one of my favorite pieces as well, that was sourced from the same estate sale that horse was back in New York. And I had asked, it was this beautiful home, but it hadn't really had any love in a long time, so it was a digger, but they had this garage in the back. I asked if I could go check it out, and it didn't look like much of anything in the garage until I started just going through stuff, and this mirror was buried under piles of stuff. It was covered in dust. And I could just tell that it was a cool piece though. So they sold it to me for, I think, $40, and I brought it home, and it's been in my last home and this home. It's one of my favorite pieces. These sconces are Venetian glass. I found those on Cherish, and they came directly from Italy. We don't currently have electricity going to them, but that's another project we hope to tackle in the near term. I did around Christmas time actually think one of the flameless candles, I stuck them in there, and the battery operated candles, you just kind of press it, but they don't have batteries in them right now. But it was really nice getting that glow from them, and I can't wait to actually have them hardwired so we can enjoy them all the time. So these were just built last night by Billy, and he said he had bought them for me for Christmas, and he meant to put them together for Christmas, so he got around to it yesterday. And I don't know that I'll leave them here forever, but I might kind of put them around the house in different places. But this is such a fun new Lego that I'm sure a lot of you have seen, all of the different floral botanical Legos that everybody's been sharing on Instagram. And then this little lip piece is from one of my favorite artists, and she also has a vintage shop. She's Canadian based, and her name's Mariana. She's at the Decor Studio is her handle on Instagram. And I have a lot of her pieces throughout my house as well. And then this tray is from a place called Ortigia, which is in Sicily. So that was a piece sourced from one of our vacations. So that's another thing, but you know, antiques and vintage are great, and I shop for antiques and vintage on vacation. But a lot of pieces in our home are also from our travels, and I think that really adds to the character and the meaningfulness of the pieces throughout our home. They really just bring back some really fond memories of trips that we've had together. So this rug was, again, originally in that room, and I would love to have a round rug in the green living room as well. But in here, having a not round rug becomes a problem with these tiles on the fireplace, because you just need to kind of cut off an angle of the rug, so round just makes a lot more sense in this space. But this is a handmade rug from Morocco, and my friend Becca, who her handle is @JuneInBlue, she's based in France now, but she sources Moroccan rugs, both vintage and new, and she gets them from different tribes in Morocco, and they were able to actually tailor the rug after making it to make it round to fit my space, which was lovely because it took care of this issue that I have with the fireplace tiles and that overlapping, but it also works beautifully in the round living room right next to us. So the paint color in here, which I call pink, plenty of people think is a neutral. It's somewhere in between probably, but this is Farrow and Ball Templeton pink. So see, it really is a pink. Okay, so this is the pocket door that we found, and it's a big project. We still have to add molding back. We have to strip the door and sand it, so it is not complete. I actually, unfortunately, took the hardware off too to kind of get started on that project, but this is what we found just hidden in the molding of this wall, and it's a mess, but it will be beautiful once we're done fixing it up. I think as far as defining my personal style, it has a lot to do with color, but I think it is mostly defined by those vintage and antique pieces. And I think I put things together in an unexpected way. As I had mentioned earlier, I'll put an antique next to a mid-century modern piece, and I never know what I'm going to do when I start a room. I mean, I have a vague idea, but as I also mentioned earlier, I really let the estate sales and the antique stores and the thrift stores and Facebook Marketplace speak to me, and I find those, you know, pieces that I can build a room off of. So I think, you know, color, vintage, antiques, and just an unexpectedness, I think really define my spaces and my personal style. One thing I love about Billy, my husband, is that he doesn't have any opinions. And in some ways it can be frustrating because if I want some advice or opinion or direction, he never has anything to offer me. But in other ways, it's wonderful in two ways. I think essentially, one, he doesn't have any opinions, so I can just do everything that I want. And then secondly, he doesn't even notice things. So if I'm at the antique store and I find a piece I really love, I don't have to worry about him actually noticing that there's like a whole new dining room table in our home. He just won't even notice. So he is extremely helpful and absolutely the one who is directing all of the DIY. He's knowledgeable with electric and plumbing and carpentry, and he really can do it all. But when it comes to design, that is definitely where I come in, and that's pretty much 100% me on the design end. So next, I would love to take you into the dining room, which is right next to this pink living room. So this is actually my childhood piano, and it's not the best piano, but it feels very nostalgic. It's the one that I learned on as a kid, and now my kids are learning on here. So we brought that piece from New York. So this rug was my 30th birthday present from my mother. I was at an estate sale with her, and I just loved this rug, but I had absolutely no money, so she bought it for me, and it smelled like cigarette smoke. So we had to have it cleaned, I think 5 or 6 different times by different rug cleaners before it actually, the smell came out, but thankfully it did. This piece was a secondhand score, but it's actually from France and Sons. Is this after Serge Mouillet, which was a famous French furniture designer from the mid-century. These are Milo Baughman chairs, and they were also sourced by a vintage dealer here in Chicago. And they have the original upholstery, which is really fun. It actually zips off for an easy cleaning as well. This piece, we call him Ned. If you've been following me on Instagram, there's lots of jokes that run around about Ned, but I found him at an estate sale attic for $10, and he's an original acrylic. And no, he is not a family member. He's a complete stranger, but he feels like family now that he's been with us for about 10 years. This china cabinet here is also a piece that was sourced by, he's actually New Jersey based, but he's called Secondhand Stories. And that was when we were living in New York. We got this beautiful mid-century piece from him as well, which I love, just kind of showing my oddities and collections. And we've been collecting decanters for a long time. Also, a lot of them are mid-century in style that Billy likes to put his whiskey collection in. I also collect busts, so a lot of these are from different places and different estate sales that I've gotten over the years. And children, whenever they come over my house, they always ask why there are so many body parts and heads and whatever. But I think it's all about the weirdness. I think that's what makes it fun and interesting. These artworks are pieces that I recently made and was selling with a company called Third Brush. That's why they're kind of still in packages and stuff. We're working on just getting those hung around the house. The wallpaper on the ceiling is another much asked about feature in this room. That's from Bell Art Studios. It's a Swedish wallpaper company. They have really beautiful wallpaper, which you'll see another one of their papers in the next space. But I just love the interest that it adds to the ceiling. And we also added crown molding in here, which we've been slowly adding to the home. I believe there was crown molding in here, but some owner in the past must have taken it out, so we are putting it back. And I could be wrong about that, but I like the way this home looks with crown molding. I think it looks more appropriate for the period. These are mostly magazines here. Some are art books from some of my favorite artists, and yeah, I've read most of them, at least partially most of them. This one's on Basquiat, Kandinsky. And these, again, are mostly magazines, though. And these are Art Forum magazines, which is a magazine I have been getting since my early 20s. I have hordes of stacks of them upstairs. But, you know, I do read them, but I also just think they're really beautiful. And they kind of keep you up to date on what's going on in the art world. And then just some of my favorite design magazines like The World of Interiors and Arc Digest, Elle Decor. Like, I have just stacks of magazines because I do actually refer back to them quite often for inspiration. So I do like to keep them around, but I think they're just beautiful pieces on their own as aesthetic standstills. This, I have to have some pieces around that my kids can play with so they don't play with all of my vintage pieces. But my older daughter, she's now 11, but she built this, I think, when she was 9, and she loves building Legos, but we have tons of them up in our attic. I just think this piece is really fun, and my little one is constantly playing with it, so that's why you see all these pieces around, and when kids come over to our house, they'll sit here and play with it also. So I love that it's a cool aesthetic piece, but also really functional as a play toy that still looks cool. So I just felt like for this home, it made more sense for the dining room to have a darker, moodier, more serious feel. It was also inspired by the rug. This rug is fairly neutral. It could really go with almost any color, but I played both off the rug and the wallpaper on the ceiling to come up with the wall color. And again, I actually did a little bit of research into period homes and what colors they would have in their living room. And that did seem to be a historically appropriate decision, if you will, to have it be a bit of a darker, moodier, more historic color in here. I absolutely think the thing that makes a home come alive is those older pieces. I think if you're shopping at just Target and IKEA, I'm not knocking those places. I have pieces from both Target and IKEA in my own home, but I think what really gives it soul is those older pieces that have been around forever, and they're just more well-made, more interesting. I think also mixing eras is something that gives a home soul, because if it's all just the same and similar silhouettes and similar colors, I think it can just read as a little lacking dimension, I guess. And I think that it's absolutely essential to have antiques, vintage, and mixing different antiques and vintage from different eras in a home. So just off of our dining room is this powder room, which was originally actually the butler's pantry that connected to the kitchen before we renovated. So we demolished our powder room for the kitchen renovation and decided to make the butler's pantry into our powder room. And I have been loving it's called Vintage Landscape Mural by Bell Art Studios. It's the same wallpaper studio that did the wallpaper in our ceiling in our dining room. So that was absolutely the jumping off point for this space. And then I really just loved how this terracotta tile, it has these little pieces of Zelig that kind of make the terracotta meet, but it felt really historically appropriate and it really blended in beautifully with the landscape mural. This is a vintage piece that I found off of Cherish. It was in upstate New York, so I had it shipped here, but it was a great price. It has awesome storage inside. I found this marble top at that same restore place I was talking about earlier, the Evanston Restore Warehouse, and I just pulled it off of the top of a different vanity. The sink was actually already in it, which was great, and I think I paid $70 or something like that for the whole marble top and sink. This faucet was in our powder room already. I had bought it for that powder room when we moved in, but we just shifted it over. The mirror is also from the Rebuilding Warehouse, and these are from Original BTC, which is a British lighting company, and they make the most beautiful light fixtures. Another thing to point out is this over here is a letter from 1914 written in Swedish, and when we demolished this room, we found this envelope in the wall and it wasn't even opened. So we opened it to read the letter. We had someone on Instagram help us translate it, and it's a letter to Elsa, the woman who lived in her home at the time, a letter from her mother talking about her father's poor health back in Sweden and just some other, really not too interesting facts, but it's just such a cool piece, and we want it to be displayed right around where we found it in the wall. And this piece here is a chair I inherited from a family member, and I just think it looks cute in here, and there's really no other reason for it other than that. Yeah, I think that's mostly it, other than like my cute little brass, it's a cigarette ashtray. Doesn't serve a function other than looking cute. And this is from another one of my Instagram vintage dealer friends. That bust I've had for a long time as well. I have always found inspiration in lots of different places. I would say primarily in traveling. So I was coming off a trip to Portugal and Sicily when I was putting the kitchen together. So, those really deeply veined, natural honed marbles were something that really spoke to me. And a lot of people say, oh, don't go for the trendy stuff. Deeply veined bold marbles are really trending right now. But I always say, look to the past and see what has stood the test of time. You'll find that in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and you'll see it in Art Deco buildings from the 1920s. It's not just a trend. I think, that's another thing that's been important, is pulling things together that feel relevant and timely, but are still classic and timeless. A close second would be just going to the marble yard and going to the thrift store and estate sales and antique stores, finding those pieces that can be your jumping off point. So for me, it was that marble I found on the marble yard that was really the jumping off point. And then second to that was this antique piece that is serving as the island. And then I kind of just built off of that. You know, I never have a complete vision when I'm starting off, but I'll find those vintage and antique pieces first and then build a space around that. And from there, it all just kind of seems to fall into place. Next, I'd love to show you our kitchen. Let's go check it out. So here we are in the kitchen, which is our most recent renovation. We just completed it last month, or I guess technically 2 months ago now. I think I had maybe mentioned earlier how one of the first things I picked out for this space was the stone. I went to the marble yard. I honestly intended on getting a Calicata viola, but I just saw this stone there, and this is called Palazzo Rose. And I had it honed. It was not honed at the time I saw it on the marble yard. And this kind of served as the basis and the jumping off point for the rest of the kitchen. This backsplash also, and the tiny little shelf, is something that I took from Athena Calderon's kitchen. And I just love how having no uppers and having the tiny little shelf really opens up the space, lets it breathe. And we compensate for that, which you'll see in a few minutes. We have a whole wall of floor-to-ceiling cabinetry, so it can still function for us with plenty of storage. So the next thing was the Bertazzoni appliances, which is a brand I have been wanting to work with for the longest time. And I absolutely love their Heritage Series line because it's this perfect marriage of modern and vintage aesthetics and just incredible functionality. And this is an induction range, which is another thing I have been wanting for a long time because it's more environmentally friendly and just healthier since there's no gas running to it. It's electric is how it works. So the blue cabinetry with the applied molding fronts, I thought would just be the perfect way to bring in some color, but also make the home, it feel really period appropriate with the applied molding and these more traditional, cabinet hardware. And there is no blue explicitly in the marble, but I kind of just loved how this shade of blue played into the marble and the darker tones and complements the lighter pink tones throughout as well. And then one of my favorite pieces in the kitchen is this, which is an antique work table from Paris. I found it on Cherish, and I can be really cheap when it comes to sourcing vintage and antiques. So it took me a really long time to find a piece with the right dimensions that was in my price range. And then I had to wait 16 weeks to have it shipped because I didn't want to pay a lot for shipping either. But I just love how it adds so much character and warmth to the kitchen. And that was one of the earlier decisions that I made for this space. And everything kind of just bounced off of that as well. Going to the floors next, where we have herringbone. It's called Renazza Herringbone by Divine Flooring. And I loved how the herringbone, again, felt like it was appropriate for the period of the home, but it brings some geometric interest into the kitchen and doesn't blend in too well with this wood work table that's now our island. So these bar stools I have been crushing on for the longest time. I usually like to source as much vintage as I can for a kitchen, and bar stools feel like a really obvious space to do that. But I just couldn't get these stools out of my head. These are called the Wave Bar Stools, and they're made by Rachel Donith. She's an Australian designer, and she has absolutely beautiful pieces even beyond these Wave Bar Stools. But these are one of the most complimented features in the entire kitchen as well. So the island is just styled with some pieces. I'm always playing around with how to style things. Most people don't think about such things in their kitchen, but because I do blogging and social media for a living, it's something that I'm constantly playing around with. And this was just a piece that was gifted by my mother-in-law. This is just a tiny piece off Amazon. These marble grapes are vintage pieces that I think I got from an Instagram vintage dealer friend, but I've had these a while and I don't 100% remember where I got those. But the countertop on the island here is actually a granite. A lot of people think it's soapstone, but I wanted to go with something that was really hard and durable because this is very porous, the marble. So this is really where we drink our coffee or red wine and do a lot of our food prep so that we can keep this marble looking good. It is beautiful, but it's not the most practical. The decision behind the island having a different countertop and being a different color is, I think, when you extend the cabinetry around your kitchen onto your island, it can start to feel a little matchy. And one of my favorite kitchen designers is the Studio Devol Kitchens. They're a British kitchen shop, and they are really famous for making kitchens feel like they're just an extension of the home, and they use a lot of armoires in lieu of cabinetry and things like that so that it doesn't feel, you know, so cold, and it feels more warm, like it really belongs in the rest of the house, and it's not purely a space for work. It's also an extension of the home. So I actually originally envisioned not even having a top on this. I wanted this to kind of serve as a really warm component to warm up the rest of the kitchen and make it feel more like a furniture piece and less like just a bunch of cabinets being thrown into the center of the room. So these floor to ceiling cabinetry pieces were both an aesthetic and a functional decision. Because we decided to not have uppers around the rest of the kitchen, we really needed to compensate for that with lots of storage space. I also wanted it to just be aesthetically seamless, so we went for the panel-ready fridge and dishwasher on the other side of the room so that it just appears like it's all one big piece of cabinetry. And over here, this is where we moved our basement stairs. There used to be a door here that would go to the basement. This is now a pantry, but that gives us a lot of additional storage in here as well. This is another project that will happen soon, but this is a back staircase in our home. A lot of our neighbors who have been renovating homes around here have eliminated their back staircase to allow for more room in the upstairs and on the kitchen level. But we just really love the function of this back staircase. And to be honest, we use this back staircase more than we even use the front. So even though it doesn't look pretty yet, it's a really functional aspect of our home. And then moving over here to our coffee bar, it's really a beverage bar, I guess, if you will. We had this sink in the integrated sink in the Palazzo Rose marble. I just love how that looks aesthetically. But again, this is a pretty porous marble, so I opted for a porcelain sink for our main work sink. And this piece, as well as our main faucet, are from Devol, that British kitchen company I was mentioning earlier. This is a ceramic from Jill Rosenwald. She's one of my favorite ceramicists. She does really funky and cool stuff. And it's also, we have two fridges here as well. They're wine and beverage fridges, which is the reason why this is overlay and this is inset, because that just had to be the case. But there's also storage there as well. But I have some vintage glassware here. One of my favorite little teapot scores from an estate sale, and this marble bookend from, even the books are from an estate sale. And this is from our trip to Sicily. It's a Testa di Moro, which if you've ever seen White Lotus, you've probably seen the Sicilian Testa di Moro, and they picked up a few of those, or some also on the other side of the kitchen from our Sicily trip. So this piece, it's a whole set, and this is from an estate sale I went to with my mother and sister-in-law, and we didn't realize that it was actually Donald Trump's finance manager's home, and he had to liquidate his entire estate, and we didn't even realize until leaving the sale whose house we had been at. But it was kind of a random story. That's the fun thing about estate sales, is you don't really know where you are, but you pick up on clues based on what's in the home. And that was just kind of a funny story from a sale last year, but there's other vintage glassware also in the cabinet. This is another favorite of mine. These are peekaboo glassware, which I don't know how appropriate these are, but you can see on the back side. These, I believe, are from the 1930s, and they're kind of highly collectible, so I picked them up as I find them. Another wildly asked about question in this kitchen is this ladder, which Billy built, and I need to do a tutorial on how to build it because everybody keeps asking, but he purchased this hardware as a ladder kit, and then he just built the ladder himself. This is a piece I found at the thrift store last year, and it's a planter made out of pine cones, and this fern is always like dropping leaves, but I just love this piece, and I even bring it outside in the summer. It's pretty hardy with the weather because it's made of pine cones, I guess. Then moving on over to our breakfast nook. This was one of the only arguments that Billy and I had. He really wanted to have a big farmhouse table, and I really wanted the breakfast nook. I just thought the design of the space, it made more sense to not be blocking the doorway and have this little nook here. It was just the perfect little spot for it. So he finally gave in, and I don't think he has any regrets. But this burlwood veneer table is a piece I sourced in New York before we moved. It was in our dining room. I moved it into here. These pieces are vintage Mexican rope chairs from my Modern Oasis, one of my favorite Chicago vintage dealers. And this striped banquette is from Ballard Designs, and I am often asked about this piece as well. It comes in a lot of different fabrics, so you can kind of customize it for your own home. These pieces, these are vintage candlesticks from another Instagram friend. This fluted marble bowl is from Curated Home Decor. It's a shop in Wisconsin that has really wonderful vintage and new pieces. And then I have the gallery wall here of art pieces I've been collecting for a really long time. A lot of people ask why I put these pieces together, and there's not a huge rhyme or reason for it, but one thing I would say about gallery walls is I think when they match too much, they fall a little flat. So I always love mixing frames and mixing, whether portrait or landscape, just giving it a little bit of dimension, I think, is always a really fun idea, but I think the colors in these pieces play really well together as well. And then these little cafe curtains we made ourselves. Billy made this little bar that went across, and I made the curtains. And these are from House of Hackney. I think it's called Limerick is the fabric. And those were super easy and quick DIY. The pendant that's hanging over here is from Jason Home, that Chicago shop I was speaking about also. And that's their tureen pendant, and that's in the gravel color. I just love what a statement it makes, and it gives off the prettiest soft glow at night when we're sitting here having dinner. And it's not our only light source. A lot of people ask about that as well. We do have can lighting throughout the ceiling, so if we really need a lot of light, we have that option, but we have a lot of different light sources that can set a lot of different moods and can function for a lot of different reasons for us, which was another thing that was really thought about a lot when we were designing this kitchen. So these I actually added, you can see underneath, it's just the rope chair here, which actually was just not the most comfortable. So I sourced, these are really inexpensive. They're from World Market. I think they even came in packs of 2, but they're really cozy. And they're actually surprisingly easy to clean as well. So I love how they really warm up the breakfast nook as well. So we eat either at this table or at the counter here. We're a family of 4, so we have the 4 bar stools. I would say almost every meal, though, is eaten at this table. Our dining room is in the midst of being transitioned into a library. We're going to be doing installed custom cabinetry throughout that room, and right now we have all of our books in our guest room upstairs, but I really wanted to bring them down and allow people to come in, borrow them and look at them. And It also allows me to have more of my vintage pieces on display for the shelves, which, you know, when you have a lot of vintage pieces and you are a hoarder of thrift and vintage, you want somewhere to display them. So those shelves will give me an opportunity to display some of the pieces that I have in storage as well. So that's a project for this year. And yeah, it won't really function as a dining room at all anymore. It will have the table in there, so when we have extra guests, we can transition it into a table we can eat at. But for the most part, it will be a library and not a dining room. The word home means a lot of different things, but I think moving from New York, where I was born and grew up and where my entire family still is, it's been a little bit difficult making this home feel like home. But it's an interesting question because just last night we were sitting around watching the Super Bowl, and you know, we were eating, my family is Italian, and we had all of the Italian meats and cheeses and everything out, and it just hit me that it was really the first time that I felt like our home was home. And I was trying to really pin it down exactly what it was that made me have that feeling. But I think it's surrounding myself with things I love and the people I love, having my daughters here. And I think food is also another element. You know, my mom is always cooking and coming home and having those smells. It's just that like olfactory sense that really brings you to this idea of home. So it's a lot of things, and I wish I could articulate it better, but I think it's not a single thing. It's a lot of things coming together.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.